Good evening. It's 7 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order. Before we begin tonight, I'd like to introduce our newest planning commissioner, Geneva Kubal, on the end there. It's our first meeting with her this evening, so please treat her kindly. That would be the commissioners, not the audience. I'm sure you'll be fine. So welcome to the Planning Commission. We look forward to your contributions.
Thank you.
Karen, would you do the roll, please?
Commissioner Young? Commissioner Batty?
Here.
Commissioner Miller?
Here.
Commissioner Keen? Commissioner Brink? Commissioner Kubal? Here. And Chair Gerard.
Here. I ask you if you're able to please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Chair is looking for a motion to approve the agenda. The chair would like to swap number 12 and 13 and have the 794 discussion before the MXR1 discussion. Do we have a motion
Move to accept the agenda
with the changes?
with the changes suggested by the chair.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Chair is looking for a motion to approve the Planning Commission meeting minutes from September 8th, 2021.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
A motion to approve.
Second.
A second. Any discussion on the minutes? Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions?
Yes, just because I was not here.
One abstention. Motion carries. Chair is looking for a motion to approve the council EDA Planning Commission workshop minutes from September 13th, 2021.
I'll make a motion to approve the planning commission workshop minutes.
We have a motion. Do I have a second? I'll second. Any discussion on the motion? Again, any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstained.
I abstain. I wasn't here.
Motion carries. I'd like to introduce Nathan first.
That's correct.
He is our interim zoning administrator. He's with Bolton and Mink, who is also our city engineer. He'll be walking us through these number of applications. We have a very full agenda tonight. So welcome, Nathan.
Thank you, Chair.
So the first motion, the first order of business will be 794 15th Street Southwest. It's a conditional use permit for a fence for Wilcox. We're going to hold a public hearing and consider a CUP application. The way this will work this evening is the city will present the application as they understand it. The commissioners will then ask any questions of the city, that clarification questions, something else they need to know. After that is finished, we will ask the applicant if they would like to say a few words. Again, the commissioners may have questions for the applicant. After that, we will host a public hearing. I'll give some further instructions at that point, but we will welcome anyone who wants to speak on an issue to comment. And then after the public hearing, we'll close it and bring it back to a decision for the planning commission. And all of the ones with the public hearing will work that way this evening. So with that, Nathan, I believe you're presenting.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, Planning Commission. I promise we didn't load it with items on purpose this evening, so I apologize in advance for the
Yes, you
meeting
did.
length. So this is a CUP request for a fence in the front yard. The subject property is 794 15th Street Southwest. The zoning district in this area is the B3 Limited Industrial Business District. The future land use in this area is considered to be general business. So this applicant, the applicant is named Randy Wilcox, who is also the owner of an auto dealership in town. The use on this site, he purchased it in the last several years. It's a detailing center that's associated with his auto dealership. There are some other uses that are also associated with the auto dealership. In the last 2 years since he's purchased it, he's made a number of improvements to the property and the buildings upon it. The two improvements that were brought to the city's attention that are subject or are described in this report are, number one, a fence was installed on the property without first having received a permit. And the second improvement that was identified is that there were some improvements to the parking lot made without consulting the city. So in order to correct the issue with the fence, the applicant was informed that he had to submit a CUP application because the fence is taller than 4 feet. The zoning code requires if a fence is to be installed in the front yard that's taller than 4 feet, a conditional use permit is required. So that's why we're reviewing this. The parking, so that's the fence. The parking lot improvements are still, city staff are working with the applicant to remedy those unpermitted improvements as well. So there is a narrative provided by the applicant providing a rationale for the improvements, but essentially the contractors that were performing them did not consult the city first before initiating the improvements, and so they didn't have the information they needed. So with respect to the fence, that's what this conditional use permit review is about. So I took a look at the city code requirements for fences, and other than the fact that a conditional use permit is required, the fence as it's installed appears to meet the city requirements. So for a conditional use permit, there are a number of findings of fact, they're called, that have to be satisfied. Essentially, trying to look at any adverse impacts that the improvements might have. Staff reviewed the improvements, and it does not appear that they will have any adverse impacts. I'm happy to go a little bit further into detail if the commission would like in those findings. A public notice, a public hearing notice was sent out to properties surrounding this one and published in the paper, and staff have not received any comments from the public on this application. So with all that, staff does recommend approval of this conditional use permit request with several conditions, 1 through 4. That's all I have formally prepared on this item. I'm happy to take any questions.
Commissioners, any questions? Dennis?
So we're not dealing with the paving issues at all on this? How is that going to be handled?
That's a good question. Staff are working with the applicant right now, communicating between him and the watershed in order to remedy the improvements.
So is there a chance that they're going to remedy it without the need to come back here?
If a land use application is required, the applicant would have to apply for whatever the process might be to have a proper review.
Susan?
Mr. Chair, I apologize. 2 of us were locked in the building. Took us a while to find somebody to let us out.
I don't want to know.
Downtown St. Paul is locked up at the moment. Nathan, isn't it usual that a conditional use permit, like a variance, is granted when the fault is some unique characteristic of the property? And what would be the unique characteristic of the property that they need the conditional use permit?
That's a good question. So a conditional use permit in a business or industrial district is required for property owners who want to install a fence that's over 4 feet in height. So that would be the circumstance that triggered the need for the permit. The fence was installed before receiving a fence permit, and so the applicant wasn't made aware of that requirement for a conditional use permit, and that's why we are here this evening.
Oh, and I apologize. This is a contractor who's never worked in the city before?
Not having a history with the contractor, I'm not sure if they've worked with the city or not in the past.
Other questions for,
My question is this: how did it come to the city's attention in the first place? I'm just a little bit curious about that process.
Yeah, I believe that it was identified that there were improvements. Obviously, when a fence is installed, you can see that, and when a parking lot is improved, you can see that. There were some conversations with the former zoning administrator and other property owners in this area that I believe led him to identify these unpermitted improvements.
and Nathan, this does not have a CUP on it currently?
There's no conditional use permit that I am aware of associated with this property.
Other questions in the city? Here, Dennis?
This is really unusual. I just have not come across, I mean, in all the years that I've been here, I mean, I've never heard of a no use permit for an item like this. You usually get a conditional use permit for a use. And this seems very strange to me. You can't do anything about it. I'm trusting that we're headed in the right direction here, but doesn't it seem a little bit unusual? It started before you came, Susan, so.
And
No,
and you're right. I've been around a long time.
no, I mean, tonight.
No. This is unusual.
I think, and I apologize if the static, I'm not sure. We had some tech issues on Monday too. And so we do have some people online and that may have been, this is kind of a trial. So if that causes some interference, I'll have to keep them muted.
Here, one of the concerns that I have about this is that the decisions we make here set precedent. And my concern is not that folks will run out and
build fences and ask for forgiveness. But my concern is, I'm not sure why this size of a fence is needed and whether or not now, wherever folks want significantly, fences that are significantly different than our code, why we will not be required. Since there aren't any unique aspects of the property, there aren't any unique aspects that have been brought forward, except we didn't check. We didn't bother to learn what your rules were. And I'm not sure that sets a good precedent for the city.
Other questions for the city? Hearing none, is the applicant present this evening and would they wish to say any words? We ask that you please come up to the lectern, state your name and address for the record, please. Spend a couple minutes.
Hi, my name is Greg Dolling with Finn Daniels Architects, here on behalf of Randy Wilcox, the owner of the property. I don't think I have anything additional to add to what Nathan mentioned earlier, but here to field any questions that you might have on behalf of the owner.
Thank you. Questions for the applicant? Susan?
Finn Daniels has done a lot of work in the city.
Yes,
Y'all didn't think to say about the fence?
We
Should we
were-
check on what the rules are?
we weren't part of the team originally when the fence was built. Randy looked for a fence contractor and hired them to install a fence. Shouldn't need an architect to have a fence involved, but so Randy trusted that contractor to do the due diligence. And what I'm understanding, going back to that story, is that the fence contractor assumed the fence was already underneath the permit for some interior alterations going on with the building. And that was a bad assumption on their part. And then the city recognized that aspect and contacted Randy, and now we're going through the process for the CUP.
We have you. Are you at all involved in the paving?
I am now, but not then. I'm helping Randy to organize both of these aspects through the submittal process.
What is the particular need for the 6-foot fence versus a 4-foot fence?
The need for the fence in general is for a security for the lot. The vehicles that are stored there are, as it mentioned, for the detail center. They come in on the trucks through this facility. They go through their required inspections before they can be taken over to the lots to be sold. So the 6-foot high fence is just a higher level of security than a 4-foot high fence that could be easily hopped over.
And now I'm not sure if this is appropriate question at this time, but I would like to know if we have an ordinance for 4 feet and because times have changed, people feel they need higher fences. Is that something that should be looked at as well in anticipation of approving something that somebody's already done and thinking about future needs of other people, that maybe the 4-foot fence is no longer a threshold that we should hold people to?
Fences are like signs, they're really tricky all the time.
Mhm.
The 6-foot is considered high, and they can put a 6-foot on the bulk of the property, but not on the front yard part of it. And so that's really what the whole discussion is this front yard presentation.
Okay.
Dennis?
I don't mean to beat a dead horse here. I'm just wondering why this isn't a variance instead of a conditional use permit. It just seems like that would be a much more logical thing. If a 4-foot high fence is permitted, why wouldn't it be a variance to construct a 6-foot high fence?
Because our code says it'll be a conditional use. Am I correct, Nathan?
That is correct.
So
I'm done.
the question would be, in my mind, and it should just really be an interim use
Mhm.
instead of a conditional use. And then we could put a 10-year time limit on it 10 years, we can look at it again and they come back for an extension on that. The reason I say an interim use permit, a continuous use permit runs with the land. So it's forever that there can be a 6-foot fence around this property. An interim means that we're looking down the road to potentially changing that use, and that use would go away then. I don't think the applicant would really have anything to worry about. We've done interims, we've extended interims. We're not huge fans of conditional use permits if we don't have to do them, especially on something, as Dennis would say, something this minor. Any other questions for the applicant at this time?
I'm not after the applicant.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Do you have a question for the city?
Yes, Nathan, is this going to be a conditional use permit on both the fence and the paving?
No, it would just be for the height of the fence, which is located in the front yard.
Thank you.
Okay, this is a public hearing. And the way this will work tonight, we'll open the public hearing. We'll ask if anyone wishes to speak to this application. If you do, we ask you to come up to the lectern, state your name and address for the record. Spend a couple of minutes telling us your thoughts. When we have heard everyone, we will close the public hearing. That'll be end of the public comment. We will then bring it back to the planning commission for a recommendation or a decision, depending on what the application requires of us. So with that, it is 7:19. We will open the public hearing. Does anyone wish to speak to this application? Karen, is there anyone online who wishes to speak to this application?
Right, no. No,
I'll ask one more time. Does anyone wish to speak to this application? Karen, I'll check with you one more time. Does anyone wish to speak?
No.
See no one come forward or no one online, we will close the public hearing at 7:20 to bring it back for a decision by the planning commission. Commissioners?
I think I agree with you. I think I would read.
I think on it, Susan,
Go ahead, sir. No, I do have a motion. Go ahead first.
I believe we have to put a number of years on an interim.
We don't have to have a specific number. The one we did on Broadway did not have a specific number. But we can.
It's the church we had a number of years because they had to come back. Okay. Michelle?
Chair, I am going to move that we table this agenda item to give the applicant an opportunity to come back with an interim permit request.
I have a motion on the table. I have a second.
I'd second that.
We have a motion and a second. The table is non-debatable. We'll call a question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. So sure the applicant has been through tables before, but in case you haven't, we're going to ask you to come and work with Nathan on making it an interim use application. And then we'll move forward from there. So we cannot discuss it anymore tonight because it was a tabled motion.
And we tabled instead of denying, because if we deny, then you have to submit a whole new application with a whole new fee. But by tabling, you're able to make some adjustments.
You don't have to raise your hand, Nathan.
Sorry, one comment for you, Chair. There is a discussion item associated with this particular request. It was as anticipated as a placeholder for a discussion on the parking lot. It might be a good idea to do that as a follow-up as well. So an update on that at the next planning commission meeting.
Sounds perfect. Thank you all. We'll move on to item number 8. I won't read the PID number because I always screw it up. It's a minor subdivision for Piper's Preserve. by Greg Radefeld. This is a public hearing to consider a minor subdivision application. Nathan, I believe you're presenting.
Thank you, Chair. Karen, I do have an item on the screen that is good to present here. All right, so on the screen, you are looking at the minor subdivision. This is a survey that was created to show the different parcels that are created. It's just a visual that I'll refer to here through the presentation. This is a minor subdivision request from the applicant, Greg Radefeld. The property ownership is MNAZ Properties. And this property is currently zoned rural residential. It also has a future land use designation as rural residential. There are two actions requested associated with this item this evening. The first is to review the minor subdivision request and provide a decision. And the second is to review the woodland preservation plan that has been recently revised and resubmitted by the applicant, and also provide a determination for that. So as a little background on this particular property, you may be familiar with it. It is the subject of a grading permit that has been renewed several times in the last couple of years. This property is currently being used to mine sand, to extract sand from the site. That process is nearing the end. So the applicant has, their grading permit is actually due to expire at the end of this month. They are now applying for this minor subdivision to, after the mining is finished, there are proposed to be 3 residential properties on the site. And those you can see on the screen. This site is comprised of 2 parcels. The total combined acreage is about 18 acres. And so now start doing a little bit of the zoning review or describing that. So in terms of conformance with zoning standards, the rural residential district requires at least 5 acres per lot and a minimum lot width of 300 feet. And these proposed parcels appear to meet those standards. They also appear to be allowing building pads which will meet setback requirements for the district. An easement will be dedicated for the private drive, which you can see on the screen here. The private drive, if you're looking at the cursor on the screen, is kind of a curved right angle almost. It's located as such to avoid wetland impacts. So with minor subdivision requests, there are identified in code criteria for denial. Upon staff review, this particular request does not appear to meet those criteria for denial. This application was shared with a number of city staff, including the fire chief, whose comments are in the staff report. He commented on the private drive. The city engineer also provided some comments on this application. City Engineer Goodman's comments relate to stormwater facilities on these lots being privately owned. Final grading plans will need to be submitted when building permits are submitted. And on further review of some of the criteria of the fire chief, the city engineer has provided some additional interpretation of engineering standards for the private drive. The city's surveying staff reviewed and provided some corrections to the legal descriptions that are proposed. The watershed has been contacted, and we don't have any comments from them at this time, although we know they are working closely with the applicant. MnDOT was also reached out and did not provide any comments. They don't have any comments on this application. So that's the zoning review of the minor subdivision request. So the second action item for this particular item is the woodland preservation plan, and I'm going to bring that up on the screen now. So the former zoning administrator, Donovan Hart, walked this property with the applicant and together came to a determination of 90 trees being required as the number of plantings that would satisfy the grading permits requirements for woodland preservation. What's proposed here in this plan are a species mix of 3 different species, and you can see them, they're all green on this particular exhibit. There are ornamental trees, 10 of those. 16 trees that are commonly known as the Freeman maple, and 66 Arrowwood viburnum plantings that are proposed. We did take a look at this related to the actual standards that are established in the woodland preservation ordinance. There are two comments that staff came up with. First is the species mix of these trees does not appear to meet code requirements because you are required to have no more than 50% of just one species. The intent of that is to, if there's diseases and things like that that run through forests, to avoid a total loss. And then the second comment is that it appears that the proposed plantings of Arrowwood viburnum would actually not be trees. That is a woody shrub. So the Planning Commission should make a determination about whether this planting plan will satisfy the the woodland preservation requirements. Staff provided a condition number 6 in the staff recommendation for approval that would address the woodland preservation plan. And then another note for you is that condition number 4, the city engineer reached out to me with a comment, and I just wanted to clarify on that as well. Number 4 should just be 18 feet wide, no curb. That was city engineer Goodman's comment. So staff do recommend approval subject to the conditions that are identified in the staff report. Conditions 1 through 6 are a little bit more unique to the site, and conditions 7 through 10 are a little bit more standard for minor subdivisions. So with that, I'm happy to stand for questions.
Questions for the city? Dennis?
You have any idea what class of wetland this is on the front of the property here?
To answer your question, I do not know the answer of what type of wetlands these are.
I mean, it looks like it just goes down to a point there between the lower 2 lots. It just seemed like that road there, it's a lot of messing around.
Yeah, I mean, to comment on this, on the private drive, the city attorney did have the opportunity to review the proposal of having a private drive and signed off on the easement. That was the idea of the access easement.
So how does a private drive work? We don't do this very often. That's shared by, I mean, we've done a lot of where there's, a single drive that serves 2 lots, but I mean, this is essentially a private drive or a road as opposed, as opposed to access to a garage.
Right.
I'm just curious, how, are there requirements that we place on that road like you would on a city street in a subdivision, or what is this? I mean, who pays for it, or when is it done, or is it done at all? This seems like this is.
Yeah, if I might answer that
Go ahead.
question. The private drive will be an easement that's shared by all of the properties. They are privately, all 3 of the property owners would be responsible for the maintenance of that private drive, and they would share in those responsibilities. The city would not be obligated to, for example, plow or improve the drive when it needs work. That would be all the responsibility of the property owners. The easement would be written into, I believe, the deed of these properties.
So we're basically treating it like a shared drive.
That's correct.
Thank you. Susan?
We've allowed private drives and shared drives more when we've had an HOA, like Forest Preserve. They've got private roads up there, and there's an HOA to take care of that. The problem with this one is the only way to access 2 of the properties is by crossing the shared drive of one of the properties. So if property to the, we'll call it northern, the more
Plan north.
northerly,
Plan north, yeah.
decides he's not going to plow or pay to have the shared driveway plowed, then the other 2 properties don't get to come in. If the paving or gravel ends up a mess and potholed, and all 3 of them don't agree to share equally on the repair, then it gets ugly really fast. I've unfortunately seen a couple of these. And it is not good policy because the city will get dragged into it. And we're looking at the potential, unless there is some sort of HOA required, so that there are some shared financial responsibilities laid out, EML of a Hess. And I'm not sure how to deal with that. I'm also a little bit concerned with the wetlands that abut Imperial. That roadway has enough challenges with wetness and water overrunning the roadway in that area as it is. And I'm concerned with the new drainage patterns that are being put together and the adequateness of that particular stormwater plan to make sure we're not going to have situation in the future. And the third concern I have is that the developer, when developer came here before us a year ago, said absolutely no problem. We're going to be out of there, and all of the trees required in the previous plan would be planted by now, so that they would be established before the ground froze. And I am disappointed that once again, what we were told was not followed through on.
Second then. So Susan, the current ownership, for lack of a better term, were they to plant as a condition of completing their permit?
Yes, they were. Yes, they were. And they, go ahead, Nathan. I'm sorry.
That's correct. It's in the, it's in there. There's an agreement that the developer entered into with the city that requires woodland preservation.
And we specifically asked during the last redo or extension or whatever we'd like to call it, will you have these planted in the fall so that they could be fully established before freeze time? And that was the agreement.
So wouldn't that be, would the woodland preservation would not be part of this then? It would then be part of,
Well, that's what I was wondering, was because I remember I was on the planning commission when this thing came up before. And I'm kind of surprised that this presentation here doesn't include they had submitted a grading plan with this thing, and this is an awful, I mean, it just seems like there's a lot of unknowns here that I mean, let me just ask a question. Is there any kind of a vehicle from an ordinance standpoint that we can have them show that they have graded this thing the way that it was, they said it was going to be graded at the end of the day? You know, like an as-built survey. I'm used to that kind of thing. I'm used to when we design and build a new building and finish it off, having to provide an as-built survey. I realize we're not building any buildings here, but this is a good sized chunk of land that a great deal of changing to the grades was done to this. And there's nothing in this here to show, and maybe it's not relevant, I don't know, but it's just surprising. It just seems to me that the subdivision process, I mean, isn't that what this is? This is a subdivision. I mean, you know, a subdivision of 50 lots would have a grading plan that's part of the submission. And there's nothing here for us to see whether or not they actually graded this the way they said they were going to, or what the grades are now.
if I could react to that question,
Absolutely.
or a question that I'm interpreting that you have is, why is this a minor subdivision, or what is the difference between this and a major subdivision? So that's one of the points that I'd like to make, is that the minor subdivision process is not quite as extensive by, by intent, I guess, as a major subdivision. So the requirements for grading plans and things like that are a little bit more relaxed, as it's a little bit simpler process. But another point that I would like to make is, this request is being reviewed as the minor subdivision. There is obviously the grading permit that is still has to be satisfied. There is an agreement that the applicant entered into with the city that identifies their obligations in terms of grading and woodland preservation and establishing erosion controls and things like that. So a review of that agreement may allow the city to do more enforcement of its requirements.
So can we make that a condition to granting this minor? I understand that a minor subdivision, just to refresh our memories, what's the break between minor and major subdivision? How many lots? or-
3 lots is as many
Oh,
as you can
okay,
have.
so 3 lots max in a minor subdivision. Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I thought, but I just want to make sure. So I'm just wondering if, I'm not trying to make this unnecessarily complicated here, but I mean, this whole drive access thing troubles me, and it just,
I think the unknown question is the property left as it was supposed to be? And to Commissioner Young, were all the trees already planted, making condition 6 here irrelevant? Because there would be no woodland preservation left to do, because it was done to close out the permit. Am I correct on this?
well, that's what it seems so unusual here. It just seems to me that if somebody promised to plant these trees and they were a requisite of a previous application that was approved by us, why is it here again? I mean, and, it seems,
Yeah,
it
I
seems
think-
unusual. I'm trying, maybe I'm making it more complicated, and I apologize if I am, but we went through a
Yeah.
number of gyrations with this thing when it came up with us before, and this looks fairly simple, except for this access drive thing, and I just seems like there should be a better way to do that. I don't know. So,
Kevin?
Hmm?
Nathan, we're holding
well, are they showing?
as a financial guarantee like $80,000 currently, correct?
That is correct.
And
That
so in order to the release that $80,000 that we currently have, he has to satisfy the terms of the previous agreement before, even if we approve this.
That's correct. I did have an opportunity to talk to the city's city attorney, and essentially it sounds like the city has a number of options in terms of enforcing the woodland preservation requirements if they're not satisfied.
So if we approve this as an example, and we allowed the woodland preservation, as we've stated here in item number 6, would that have any effect on the current agreement we have? Would that alter that agreement?
No, they would still have to satisfy it.
Okay.
I have a question about the placement of the trees. Is that what they're thinking? They're going to go with those green spots on the other picture?
Yeah, the applicant did mention that there was a rationale that they had for the location of the trees.
Okay.
Essentially, I don't want to represent for them if the applicant is here this evening. Okay. Essentially, the placement of the building pads and the septic fields are driving some of the decision-making on the location of the trees.
Okay, and then I'm curious as to why there's nothing in like the second parcel or the middle parcel. So if there's a percentage requirement of trees like for that whole area, shouldn't a portion of them be in the second area somehow to meet that same percentage requirement?
I don't know Okay, so it's my understanding that the location of the plantings was a discussion point that the former zoning administrator had with this applicant. I don't know what their rationale is for why these two areas are the primary locations for the trees. What I do remember is kind of what I was saying is that it seems like the building area is driving some of this decision-making.
Nathan, now I'm really, really puzzled. So the applicant has complied with all the previous grading permits. And as part of those previous grading permits, all of the trees that were supposed to be established as part of that previous grading permit, that has all now been complied with. And this is new and separate and different. My understanding was that this is a requested modification to the previous grading permits and tree work. And one of the reasons I'm really puzzled is because two of the proposed building locations, one of them is butted right up on 97. And the other, and two of the three proposed building locations will take out additional trees. And so I'm just very, I'm sorry, Nathan. Usually I've got these things under control, but I'm really confused.
Okay, so I'll try and tackle what I think your questions are one at a time. So with respect to the timing of these applications, obviously you have the grading permits set to expire in a number of days. And associated with that grading permit was the requirement to satisfy the woodland preservation plan. And that's really the only outstanding item that I am aware of from the grading permit that hasn't been satisfied. Turf has been established on site. It appears that the final grading has been taking place. So that would leave the tree planting requirements. So this application kind of came as the applicant's next step for this site, which is to, okay, now that he's nearly done with the grading permit portion of it, of the use, then they're gonna switch over to having the residential use of the properties. The only outstanding item being, again, that tree preservation plan. So he revised and resubmitted in August the plan that we're currently viewing. And as a way to present that to the city to approve the change, that is why it's associated with this application as sort of another piece of the item here that we're reviewing. So does that help answer the question that you have, or?
I'm making progress.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Dennis?
I'm still just shaking my head on this. I just, apparently in a minor subdivision, they don't have to declare show a building pad for the house. These little polygrams that they're showing on here are where they're suggesting that septic systems go. And Susan's right, if you're going to put them there, I mean, whether you're going to put a house there or a septic system there, you're going to take out trees to do that. It just seems, and I don't know that they necessarily have to go there. It doesn't look to me like there's any correlation at all between the placing of those and what the grades are on the grading. There is unusual topography. If you look at, there wasn't topography on the subdivision plan, but on this landscape plan, the topography is shown there, and I mean, it's unusual. We knew this when we considered this before. And I just, I'm still just baffled by, I don't even want to go to the tree preservation thing, because viburnum is not a tree in anybody's book. I mean, not anybody's book. And 3/4 of what they're proposing here are viburnum bushes. Those aren't trees. And it just, I don't want to make it unnecessary. I think you know me well enough to know I'm pro-development and I don't want to make life miserable for people, but it just seems like there's some really gaping holes in this here and I don't understand Donovan's notion to plant. The ones on the south side of the site are fine, but on those on the north side of the site, seems to me you're taking out about half of the potential area of the lot where you could build a house and you're putting trees there, and that doesn't make any sense to me. So I just, I don't know. I think we can, I can deal with the subdivision part of this, but this tree preservation thing, I just don't think it even comes close to meeting the intent of the ordinance, the way this is laid out here. I'm sorry, Donovan's a good guy, but I'm not sure what happened on this one.
I just want to say that I did inform the applicant of the results of the review for the tree preservation plan. I let him know that he would have an opportunity to be here this evening to
Okay,
discuss the rationale for why it is the way it is. So I just wanted to let you know that he was presented with that information.
I think at this time, if the applicant is here, we'd like you to come forward and hopefully enlighten us in this. We ask you to state your name and address for the record, please.
Greg Radefeld, partner in MNAZ. And if I can give you if you remember, we can go back and kind of to day one. This was supposed to be, and the first time you saw it, had 12 lots plotted out. We went through the whole process, met with Donovan, with all the engineers, for the grading, the road, the whole thing was done that. Donovan and I walked the whole site. And at that time, Donovan said, well, what are we going to do with the intention of how many trees are we going to remove and what's going on? So there has to be a judgment of the trees, of the value of the tree before you can decide if on the replacement values. So I said, I really don't know at this point. We'll just consider 100% removal from one end to the other. I didn't want to come in and say, well, we're going to save this tree and that tree, and we're not going to do that. So we walked the site. There was a third person involved, and I don't know who that was, someone else with the city. And he started looking at the trees and he said, this is an old growth bunch of trees, and they have to be a viable tree. So anyway, we come up with this 92 tree count. So we went through the whole thing for the grading permit for the site. In the 12 lots, we had all the engineering done for the 12 lots in the road. Well, then I got a call from Donovan saying he made a mistake, that we couldn't get 12 lots in there. We could only get 3. My comment was, I would have never got involved in this thing for 3 lots. So when we got back, we met with Donovan, the engineers, and because of the MUSA line, and this is out of the MUSA area, and we couldn't hook onto the MUSA line. Okay, so the next step then is we had to prove there are viable sewer sites. So the diagrams that you see there were tested out by a soils guy to make sure there's 10,000 square feet of land to put a septic site on. And that's why those sites are down there. There are no trees in there, basically. If you look at your tree plan, I had a few problems with the tree plan. Number one, the city requires a arborist, engineered arborist. You can't find one. I've been to Applewood Nursery, we were as trees, who's done our work for 35 years, went to the one on 95. I was looking for an arborist, engineered arborist. I got different ideas from each one of these people of what could go on. We did a very similar project to this in Lindstrom underneath the water tower, the Cove project. It had a fairly steep back grade to it. The concern that every one of them to a person had is to put trees on a sandy, steep slope is a very poor decision because they'd blow over before the tree or once it got up because it's not going to root well. So the plan was and why the viburnum was used is what the same we used in Lindstrom. Now, Kelly Jordan, he's the arborist. He had the same decision that they need to put in a plant that won't grow high, won't blow over, but it'll maintain these side slopes. So that's kind of where that came up. And the decision to place the trees are on the base of that hill. Those are big lots, they're 5, 6 acre lots. So when you look at the plan, it kind of looks like it's jammed in there, but there's a lot of room on there. We couldn't put anything on the center lot because you can't dictate, if we'd put something there and you can't dictate where they're going to build their house, their outbuildings, whatever they're going to do, to build them around trees that we arbitrarily put on there. So that's why all the trees were put on the two sides. The other thing is when Donovan and I walked the site and we talked about completely removing all the trees. If you look at your tree plan, all those dark trees are all existing trees. So in effect, we should have reduced our count by the significant trees that were left in there. So we, didn't want to get into all that sort of thing. So Kelly Jordan came up with this plan with the different type of trees, putting the ornamental trees in. Basically for bird cover, they got seeds and they cost more money than a regular tree. So if you're looking at offsets, if you're looking at money out of our pocket, it's probably a wash or we're probably losing a little bit. I don't think. But we're trying to put some lots together. They're going to sell for decent money. Our idea is to have something that's going to look good when we're done. The other thing is you say, why didn't we complete this when we told you we'd do it? A couple of reasons that was being, obviously with everybody else staying at home, we had to get rid of the material that was on site before we could do anything. So we had to wait for some demand before we could do that. All right, so the site's been done, cleared, graded, topsoil's been put back on. The state has signed off because we've got the proper growth we needed. The local watershed district, I met with them, give them another $2,000 on top of the $4,000 I gave them originally. And then when each person gets their own lot, they got to pay another watershed district permit fee to have them do their deal. Now, when you talk about why weren't they put in, we had a hot summer with no water. None of the people I talked to get pricing on this would guarantee a tree planted this summer. They all wanted to wait till this fall. So that's what we're going to do. The trees, once we get approval, we're going to plant the trees this fall. As far as the grading goes, the elevations have all been shot and you've got a grading and a finished preliminary elevation, final grade. The final grade that's out there now is the same exact grade that was permitted under the 12 lot plot as far as elevation 2 Imperial. So that grading permit And this grading, final grade is all exactly what was permitted in the first place. As far as watershed running out on Imperial, the watershed district is going to complicate our life on that thing. I mean, it's, they've just started on us. You know, so they are not going to allow us to run water across Imperial. I'm sure they're going to want, just like they did on another project, they're going to want holding ponds, infiltration pond. I don't know what all they're going to get into along with the rain gardens. That is something I don't know. But we're started the application process with them and they're working on it. What other question did you have?
You know what class of wetland that is?
It's all been valued and the setbacks and the
So you
grading.
do have a
is-
wetland delineation
Yeah.
report.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
for sure,
Yeah.
for sure. And now the wetlands, they want a MinRam, which is a farther in-depth deal. And that's already been done. That was done before we did the initial application. That's all been submitted to the watershed district. Can you think of anything else I'm missing?
Thank you. Well, they'll let you know if they think of anything else.
Well, I want to just address, because I think Susan brought up a really good point about that road and what is the ultimate plan for
Well,
if it's 3 properties and
There would be an alternate plan and to a developer's standpoint, to put a road like you were suggesting, anytime you get close to a wetland and fill and to get the grade up, plus we'd be adding another driveway onto Imperial, close to the stop sign. And then we'd end up filling and cutting more trees down to get it in from Imperial in through that little narrow neckline. It's an option. But I'm sure the wetland people are not gonna, it's gonna be a fight with them to get that done. So this, and as far as who's gonna maintain the road, it's no difference if you got 3 people or 2 people. If you got a shared driveway and you got 2 people on that shared driveway, if one guy says, I'm not gonna plow it, you got the same problems if you had 3. Every person has in their description for their lot the right of that easement. So lot 1 couldn't put up a fence or can't do anything. What happens if lot 1 decides he isn't going to pay for anything? It's kind of a problem with the homeowners when they buy the lot. They're not, you're talking a couple $100,000 lots. And so the houses are probably going to run 400, 300 piece plus the lot. I don't think those people are going to go too much for not having the road plowed. They're going to be doing it plowing or, but again, like I say, if you have 2 people on a shared driveway or 3, the difference is probably not going to be much.
So my only concern is usually when we have shared driveways, there's like a driveway and it splits. On this one, in order to get to 2 of the lots, you have to cross one of them. In order to get to the 3rd lot, you have to cross 2 of them. And that's my concern, and that's where I've seen difficulties.
The difference kind of with this is it's a deeded easement. So no one person owns that easement, right? All 3 people enjoying that easement. So it's, I go along with your idea. If you've got a driveway, you can kind of say, well, I'm just going to plow my half of the driveway. But they don't have I shouldn't say they don't, because maybe they did have a conjoined easement over both both. If they did, you can't put a fence down the middle because you own part of both sides of that driveway. And that's the case here. All 3 people enjoying that easement through there.
Greg, But I've seen these in the past, lenders, that before they're gonna loan money, if someone's gonna borrow money to buy something like this, they're gonna require a shared driveway agreement between all parties. Is that something you're intending on putting into place up front that deals with maintenance, it deals with repairs, it deals with who does what?
Would it have to be, you got three people. So what I envision, and we haven't, that's part of the deal with the realtors, and we've got the easement drawn out and deeded. The deed isn't through, but it's described. Now, it's a simple deal. I don't want to start an HOA because that's just like a battleground.
A shared driveway agreement is just an agreement that all parties sign that lenders will require that
Yeah.
deals with who's gonna maintain that driveway, what happens if it needs repairs, things like that.
I agree 100%. The good thing about this, you got three people. So if lot one says, I don't want to put blacktop down, but the other two say we want blacktop, with that agreement, they'd have to blacktop and share the cost.
Other
At what
questions
point
of the
that
applicant?
agreement gets drawn up? I mean, if that's something you want done before it gets to council, they can have it done.
Not for me, it's for a lender.
Yeah.
If
I agree.
someone's gonna, if a bank's gonna loan money on that, they're gonna require to see that.
Well, I think it's a good idea anyway, that it should be put in there. I'll have it put in, drawn up that there'll be an agreement to that effect.
Thank you. We may have more questions later for you. Nathan, just to clarify for me, I believe this private drive will still have to be paved like all driveways.
Yes, it would have to meet the standards established for driveways in the city, which is to have them paved.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. We ask if you wish to speak to this issue, come on up to the lectern, state your name and address for the record, and then spend a couple minutes on your thoughts for this applicant. Once we have heard everyone, we will close the public hearing and bring it back for a decision by the planning commission. So we will officially open the public hearing. It's 8:05 PM. Does anyone wish to speak to this application? Hearing there's anyone online who wishes to speak?
No, sir.
I'll ask one more time. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to this application? Karen, anyone?
I have no one.
Seeing no one come forward or anyone online that wishes to speak, we will close the public hearing at 8:06 PM. Bring it back for discussion and a decision by the planning commission. Susan?
Nathan, this is zoned rural residential.
Oh, yes, that's correct.
I don't think a paved driveway is required.
Yeah, point taken. I would have to review the requirements specifically for rural residential. Thank you for bringing that up.
Otherwise, I got about a mile of driveway I gotta pave.
Point well made. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that one up.
Other discussion? Nathan, were you looking for, is it acceptable to have one motion with the woodland preservation covered in item 6, or were you looking for two motions?
Yeah,
One for
so
the one for the subdivision and one for the woodland.
you could make one motion with respect to the minor subdivision request, and if it's subject to the condition that condition, I think we established that would be
6.
condition number 6, then it would effectively approve a plan that satisfies the planning commission.
Thank you. Commissioners?
I'm okay with it. I mean, I'll make a motion that, based on the city recommendations, that we approve the minor subdivision request and create 3 legally conforming lots, subject to the 10 conditions that the council, or that are listed.
Second.
I have a motion. We have a second. Discussion on the motion.
And for the applicant's knowledge, the viburnum are not a part of this. They have to be real trees. And
there are several good arborists who will help you with trees that will be able to be established there.
My question, Kevin, would be, do we need an 11th item regarding this driveway agreement that you were discussing earlier? Or that's just let them hash it out with the
Yeah, I
lawyers?
don't think so. I mean, that's something they're gonna have to figure out. I can tell them, I can tell the applicant that your life will be a lot easier if you put that in place before you sell the lots. But that's up to them.
Any other discussion?
I'm just looking at this woodland preservation condition number 6 there. Says the woodland preservation plan for this property shall be amended to include a species mix of no more than 50% of any one species of replacement tree and shall include only tree species as defined in the city code. I'm guessing that the city code doesn't include viburnum in
Does
their
not.
trees.
It does not,
Okay,
That's
so we're
correct.
covered.
That would be my interpretation.
yes.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Good luck with your project. Moving on to item number 9. 1029 North Shore Drive. This is variance to setbacks and impervious surfaces for the Molnars. We will hold a public hearing to consider the variance application. Nathan, I trust this is yours.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This variance request item is actually, I want to clarify right away, 2 variances are requested here. They're presented as one item simply because the findings for these variances are very related. So the variance requests that are in front of the Planning Commission this evening are number 1, a variance to setbacks requirements for the side yard in a single-family zone property. And number 2, a request for a variance from the impervious surface maximum in the Shoreland Overlay District. So those are the 2 requests that are being reviewed as part of this item. This is associated with the subject property at 1029 North Shore Drive, which is owned by Joseph and Nancy Molnar. They have been working with a local, I believe local, they've been working with a builder who after they purchased this property, which was recent.
Jason, do you have any presentation?
Yes, thank you. I will scroll to the correct slide here.
Rookie mistake.
All right, here you can see on the screen an existing conditions survey. It details obviously some of the impervious surface on the property, as well as you can see this essentially what was the concrete base of a former detached structure and the footprint of the foundation of a home. I say those in the past tense because they have been demolished and removed from the property. The property owners purchased this property with the intent of removing both structures and then simply rebuilding one principal structure with an attached garage. So what they're proposing to do is on this slide here, you can see, I'll zoom in. They're proposing an attached garage here, which is attached to the principal structure here. It's worth noting that the footprint of the home and the garage that was formerly detached and the new configuration are roughly equivalent. So the contractor removed the buildings without having first gotten approval to reconstruct in the new reconfiguration. The reason I say that is that's the reason that a variance is in front of the Planning Commission this evening. So because here, I'll identify, there's 2 nonconformities that are still present on this site. So you can see the former garage. This is the base of that garage. was still within this dotted line here, is dashed line. That is the 10-foot side yard setback that's required in this zoning district. So that garage was in violation. And the new garage, you can see, is still going to be in violation, although less so. So it went from around 7 to 8 feet here to 9.2 feet with the proposed configuration. So that was the first nonconformity. The second one is, sorry. The impervious surface of this older lot, or the older configuration, is 42.2%, and the new impervious surface that's proposed is 37. So they're still above the 25% maximum that's in this district. So because the property is not being brought fully into compliance with city code, they had to request a variance. So staff reviewed this particular request or requests against the findings that are required to grant a variance. And it does appear that the findings that can be established that meet the statutory criteria for the granting of a variance. Essentially, the applicant has identified that they are looking to rebuild a new configuration that violates the city code a little bit less than it did previously. So the city engineer has also had an opportunity to review the site plan and the variance request, and did provide a few comments. One, that a grading plan should be submitted that shows improved grading on the site, and requiring downspouts that do not shoot water out onto neighboring properties. And then also suggested that the applicants look into further ways that they can further reduce the impervious surface on this site. And then the city engineer did also provide an annotated site plan that detailed ways that they may be able to do that. And that is what I'm showing you on the screen now. So there was a comment on, is this sidewalk here that's connecting the garage, or sorry, the house with the proposed driveway, is that necessary? And then perhaps taking some amount of impervious surface off of the driveway. So those are the comments that the city engineer had for this application. And then the Minnesota DNR was also provided an opportunity to comment, as is required in the city code. They did not get back to us with any comments. So staff does recommend a conditional approval of this variance request, provided that the applicants meet the conditions that are identified in the staff report. Conditions 1 and 2 are a little bit more standard, whereas conditions 3, 4, and 5 are more unique to this specific request. So that is all I have formally prepared. I'm happy to take any questions.
Commissioners, any questions?
I actually have one. If they're above or below, and I don't know what the term is, in compliant with the impervious surface issue, why would the engineer make any recommendations about further changing the impervious surface?
Yeah, they're essentially, well, okay, so there's a couple points that I have on that. First is that the city code encourages residents who are exceeding, specifically in the Shoreland Overlay District, the impervious surface maximum. Their residents who violate the impervious surface maximum are encouraged to reduce the amount of impervious on site. So that comment is very consistent with the city code requirements.
Okay, so then I want to understand this. They're over the 25% now, and this is going to bring them closer to the 25%.
That is
Okay,
correct.
That's all right.
Yep.
That's all I need. Thank you.
Other questions? As long as we're on the impervious, on the, as the original plan shows, you were the garage, and then we had the math doesn't add up to me here. I have 8,200 square feet under the old plan. Now I've moved the garage up and I got to add driveway, and I've reduced the impervious.
It looks like, so I'm cycling, so the screen is showing right now the existing conditions on the site. And now I'm going to show the proposed
Wait, before you
configuration.
leave there though, right?
Okay.
Go back. The proposed garage isn't there now. What was there before?
That was screen, that was the space between the detached garage and the home, as I understand it, was pervious, it was turf.
Was turf. So now we fill it up with 1,000 square feet of garage and extended a driveway into it, and I have less impervious.
Yeah, so if you see the driveway here in the existing conditions on the screen now, and then you look at the driveway in the proposed conditions, they've removed a fair amount of impervious surface. So I believe that's where they're making up the difference. And you have, it's worth noting as well that you do have the signature of a licensed surveyor on this survey. On this one here,
Mm-hmm.
which shows sorry, I'm screwing up here, which shows the calculation there. So they have at least signed off on this calculation here.
My second question is on the, it looks like they got a little hammerhead there so they can turn around. I believe, can't we cut that off? They only can be 5 feet from the, you can only encroach 5 feet into the setbacks for the driveway, I believe. So could we require them to eliminate that 5 feet of the hammerhead to bring that part into compliance also? Following me?
Yeah, I am following you. I'm thinking about the fact that with a legal non-conforming land use, that you're allowed to continue that provided that you do not expand it. So in terms of the violation of a setback for a driveway, if they're not looking to change that or expand it, then they can maintain it. But they could be encouraged to remove it.
I think a little more, well, there's always on a variance, a bit of
Sure.
give and take. To determine what's going to use. Kevin?
Nathan, can you bring up the proposed again?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you have a question, Kevin?
Yeah, and the square we see up near the street, is that like a rain garden on the other side of the turnaround? I guess on the north side or yeah. That
What
where
are
it
those
says
rectangles?
These appear to be raised planting beds.
raised planting beds. And does that have an effect on impervious or is that, looks
Garden-
like
no,
they're
gardens
gardens,
are
so they
not.
don't, yeah,
Yep.
okay.
Susan?
Mr. Chair, when we have non-conforming uses, somebody strips the property down, the whole thrust of our planning work is that you end up with no non-conforming uses. In other words, when we said, okay, you can rebuild on your foundation and we're going to ask you to make the deck a little smaller and you're rebuilding on your foundation. And so we're going to help a little bit. But when you strip it down and start new, you no longer have a. All right, when you strip it down and start new, there are no particular surrounding shape or topographical conditions unique to the specific parcel that are a practical difficulty to the owner would result as distinguished from a mere inconvenience. When you start new, you are able to not need variances. That is why we have the rules around a non-conforming use and a conforming use, and why we have the rules around, okay, we understand that you had a fire, or we understand that there were ice jams or something, and so part of your house was gone, but we're not going to, and so I'm having a real hard time understanding why you believe that there is no way that they can construct a brand new house on this lot.
So I do have a comment.
That is, they choose the size of the lot, or the house, they choose the size of the garage, they choose those things.
I think it's definitely a fair point. So a couple comments on that specifically. So the applicants are looking to rebuild exactly on the foundation of the home. You would be permitted to rebuild exactly as it was. So if they wanted to, like basically rebuild the house as it was, they could do that.
Can I just add one thing that'll help you? I know, I'm sure, the house is still there. The existing foundation is still there. That is not gone. Just like, we're not starting new. The house is still there.
Dave, I assume you'll be speaking for the applicant?
But it sounded like you knew that it wasn't a big lot. The house is still where the house is. We did not rip down the foundation.
Just one more point on the variance piece. So the lot itself is not a lot that would be permitted today. It's 50 feet wide. So in terms of the setback request, it's tough to rebuild the configuration that would meet current 10-foot setbacks. The other comment is with respect to the lot size and impervious surface. In order to access the home, and the location of the home on this site is, as they're proposing to build it in the same exact location, which is consistent with a lot of the built form of the surrounding neighborhood. So in order to get back to that home, they need an improved driveway, and that does count against them in terms of the impervious surface maximum. So I just wanted to provide those two points to you as you discuss this.
Dennis?
Just a couple points over here. So how are we gonna address this thing when it comes to making motions and stuff like that? Is there going to be two motions, one for each variance? Is this going to be included as a package?
I believe we typically do these as a single motion on the variance.
Okay. I'm just wondering if we should hear from the owner here. I mean, I've got some things to say about this, but I'm just wondering if we should hear from the owner, or the owner's representatives here, and before we, so that we're not, arguing about things here that, they may have an answer to. I come at this, as you know, I come at this particular problem from both sides of the fence. Sorry, you're looking at the absolute master of shoehorning stuff on, working with site coverage limitations. I can legitimately brag about that. And we're not even close on this one. Even if we allow them to rebuild the house exactly where it's at, they can do a whole lot better on this, coming closer to the site coverage thing. I'm not concerned about a 1 or 2 foot variance in a setback in this particular consideration, but I am concerned about a 12% overage. And it comes back to this thing of setting a precedent. And there's two issues here. One, it can be done a whole lot better than it's been done and is currently being done by other people who face exactly the same concern. When you buy a 50-foot wide lot, you buy constraints, period, end of conversation. I don't care how difficult it is to meet that particular consideration. When you buy that kind of a lot in this setting, you buy limitations. And I'm not about to approve something because we're doing better. I'm just not. I'm just telling you that right now.
Other comments? Let me take it before I ask for the applicant to speak. How are we sitting on the 9'2" side setback? Are we good with that? Are we bad with that?
But two's fine.
I'm okay with it.
I'll live with it.
Susan will live with it. So we got general consensus that that's not the issue here, and that the issue strictly is the impervious surface. We in agreement?
Absolutely. Yep.
So would the applicant like to address us and specifically discuss that item? Please
Good
state
evening,
your
Joe
name.
Molnar, the applicant on your property. The thing was that we did come to one of your former employees and discuss this whole thing originally. We were told there was no problem with doing this because it was a grandfathered grandfathered into this operation. We were not increasing the impervious surface at that time. We were actually reducing the impervious surface, and therefore we shouldn't have any problem with going ahead and building on property on like that. That's what we were told. So we continued on. We got the permits to demolish the top of the house, the separate garage that was in front of the house, and took that off, and came to the next part where we're going to go for the permits to build a house. On the last day that former employee was there, he sent a letter to us stating the fact that we had to get a variance for the impervious surface and we had to get a variance for the setback. So we started this process and came with this. I agree with your 50-foot lot theory that you've got. The only problem is when the road's out there and the house is back there, unless you want to go with a dirt drive, which I also understand is an impervious surface in Forest Lake for the law, that it's hard to get there unless you got the driveway. And that's, the driveway has got, it starts at the road and ends at the house. So there's not much, I don't know what else you can do about that. We're cutting, we did cut out, Nathan brought up the good points about the fact that we did cut out that he had a whole section of asphalt that ran along the garage that was there originally. That's coming out. We took a 10-by-14 shed off of the property, demolished that and took that off. So that cuts back on some of the impervious surface that was there before. But, you know, I noticed that the engineer had some things that they said that we can possibly look at and see if we can get done. That's no problem. I'm not sure what else we can do.
Have you been to Keys Restaurant?
I'm sorry.
Have you been to Keys Restaurant?
Yes, I have.
Have you noticed their parking lot?
The pavers. I was told that's not an impervious surface. I mean, I was told that was a impervious surface.
Partially pervious.
Well,
It will give you a significant assist.
I agree with you 100%, and I would love to do that, Susan. I would definitely go with those pavers in there and make the difference up in pavers. I have no problem with that. Nathan?
I can answer that for you.
Oh,
In the residential district, pavers are considered pervious,
Pervious.
impervious, I'm sorry. They are considered no different than a concrete driveway in the residential district. We have never changed that. The reason behind not having changed it in the past is it requires maintenance and some of the other stuff. And the last time we looked at that, which was years ago, we weren't willing to go there. So currently, the applicant is correct. It would be considered impervious.
Thank you.
It's rare, Susan, that I can tell you anything.
and the reason I go along with that, Susan, is the fact that I have pavers on my driveway now, and I think they're great, so. But, and the water does go through it, yes. Anything else?
Dennis?
No, I appreciate what you've had to say here. It's just that there are some other things here that can be done. I don't know if it can be reduced down to 25%, but it can be reduced down quite a lot more than what it is. You know, I think the first thing that has to go as asphalt paving is the hammerhead. There are other ways to do the hammerhead. And there are also other ways to do the drive other than a single width of paved asphalt or concrete, whatever it is that you intend to put down there. And those are, you just drive down North Shore Trail when you leave here tonight and look at the lakeside, and you can see some creative approaches to doing that, most of which were done to meet this 25% limitation on the pervious part of the site. Just so I mean, there's been some confusion here on what it is that's actually being done. The existing house is being torn down. And if I understand correctly, a new house is being built using the existing foundations? Is that
That's
what's-
correct.
Is that what's going to happen?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. I mean, just one obvious thing with the hammerhead, it's interesting that it's as far away from the garage as it is. If you're going to have a hammerhead, why don't you make it convenient and put it up there by the garage? You could, if you put it off of one side of the wider part of the drive, that automatically eliminates part of the square footage right there. The drive is also wider than it needs to be, unless you do a lot of wattle piloting, it's wider than it needs to be. And I think there are things that can creatively be done that aren't, won't make it problematic for you, that can reduce that. But I think 12% over the max is way too much. I'm not going to go to this whole thing of rebuilding and what is grandfathered in and isn't grandfathered in, just to say that I don't agree with our ordinance on that. But I'm for applying the ordinance the way that it's written. And it's not my understanding that the ordinance allows the grandfathers in a certain amount of paved pervious area. Am I correct on that, or am I not? Is the percentage of paved or pervious area, impervious area, the maximum amount? Is that not covered in the ordinance?
So there are two parts of the ordinance that discuss non-conforming amounts of impervious surface. There's the general non-conformities ordinance, or part of the zoning ordinance, which discusses all non-conformities. And then there's a specific provision within the shoreline overlay. In instances where there's essentially redevelopment, the amount that's of impervious surface that's going to be resulting is going to have to be revisited against the city standard.
Okay.
And that's why they're here for the variance this evening.
Okay, so in essence, it's not covered. Okay, I just want to make sure. I'm not trying to be difficult. I just want to make sure we're understanding exactly what the ordinance says here.
Y'all are putting down new driveway, right?
I mean,
Y'all are putting down new driveway?
eventually.
Yeah. So that doesn't, it's not grandfathered.
A public hearing to do.
Oh, yeah. Other questions before we come back on the debate here for the applicant specifically? Thank you. We may have more for you. Thank you for your time. This is a public hearing. Like anyone who wishes to speak to this application, please come up to the lectern, state your name and address for the record. Spend a few minutes on this application, giving us your thoughts. After everyone has spoke, we will then close the public hearing and we will come back for discussion and a decision by the planning commission. So we'll open the public hearing officially at 8:36 p.m. Does anyone wish to speak to this issue? Karen, is anyone online who wishes to speak to this application?
Chair, I do not have anyone at this time.
I'll ask one more time. Does anyone present wish to speak to this application? Karen, anyone come online in the last 20 seconds?
No.
So since no one's coming forward and there's no one online that wishes to speak, we will close the public hearing at 8:37 p.m. and bring it back for discussion and decision by the planning commission.
I think the biggest challenge that we have as a commission is the impervious surface and the pervious surface. I don't think as we talked earlier, the side setbacks are that major of an issue for us. I mean, I don't see that being a big problem. You're pretty close to where it was but as you are building a new garage and as you are putting in a new driveway, you have to consider that. And Dennis had mentioned there are a number of ways to go ahead and do what you want to do and be creative with your driveway that would probably reduce your impervious down considerably. But I know that's probably not what you'd like. That's a tough thing for us because we've had a lot of these applicants on around the lake, and it comes up quite often. But most of them have been able to make some pretty good adjustments, and they still have some beautiful, beautiful driveways up to their property. Wide concrete paved driveway all the way up. And I'm sure Mr. Batty could share some creative things that he's done on a few of the plans that he's drawn around the lake as well. But I know that's our concern, or my concern. I wish that we could look at changing that impervious amount, because we have a lot of applicants that would like to have, more of a solid surface. But being on the lake and with the overlays, it's tough.
Susan?
And the reason that we're so solid on this is that I understand that 12% on your property doesn't seem like a lot. 12% on the next one, 13% on the next one, 14% on the one after that. And we already have significant water quality concerns in Forest Lake. And additional impervious surface just adds to those water quality concerns, as opposed to trying to make the water quality better for the folks that are living on the lake. And so there's a reason for our impervious surface standards, surface standards. And there is a reason why, when we're having a redevelopment, we want to fix the non-conforming issues. I don't hear, Mr. Chair, you maybe hear it differently, but I do not hear an appetite to allow more than the 25% impermeable surface. Oh, there.
The difficulty here is that this is area-wise, in my mind, a fairly large lot on the lake. It's almost a half an acre, I believe. Remember my math here. Which we should be able to come pretty close to hitting. Yeah, it's 19,000 square feet, which is considered a pretty decent sized lot on the lake. And to be blunt, if the foundation wasn't in today, you'd pull it back 30 feet, you'd probably hit the 25%. I'm not saying that I would need to get down to 25%, but I'm not a fan of as high as we are, which I think is 37, is that my?
37.
Yeah. I'd be looking 30, 32 maybe, as we've done. And the reason 30 comes in my mind is we've allowed that on smaller lots that are substandard in area. We allow up to 30% impervious, but 37 is big.
Mr. Chairman,
Sure.
can I ask the owner another question?
Certainly, we're on the discussion.
What kind of a schedule are you on here? Can I answer it? Sure.
Please state. Excuse me.
Schultz, I'm sorry.
Name and address for the record. We like to keep some
My name
decorum.
is Dave Schultz, 343 South Shore Drive, and I'm building the house for the Malners. the first thing we did is check with the pervious. The real estate agents told us that it was grandfathered in, we could keep the same amount. And I called Mr. Hart and asked him about that. He said, yes, we would like to see you lower that number on the project. So that's why we didn't bite off little corners and stuff, because we did bring the project considerably lower than what it was. As far as my permit is ready. The building application has all been turned in. We thought it was done until the day he left. Is the first time we have heard, because we built the house where the house was, the same side. And these were all talked about with your former employee. So like the timetable is yesterday, because the permit's ready for us to pick up. But we didn't find this out until the day he left, because we did everything.
Mr. Schultz, I'll just make a comment that even though you didn't find out to the day he left, because a variance would have still been required.
There was,
It still would have came in front of us.
that there was no variance. We weren't under the, we had talked to him. He didn't say anything about a variance. We were doing everything that they had told us to do. He did not say apply for a variance. He didn't tell us any of that. I talked to him about the 9'2". We could have moved the garage over. He said, no, that meets within. We talked about, because it's even on the existing, it doesn't show the sidewalks that were on there, the sheds that were on there, because we just thought we were lowering it. We didn't really work to show that we could get it down less, because he said he didn't make that seem like the Mullners, and we can definitely cut out the turnaround, let's call it. It's there now. The neighbors, it's kind of a U-turn for that property and the neighbor, so they both
So
use
that's
it.
why it's there.
That's why it's there. That's why it's down the property so long, because the other driveway, it works out for them. So all that tar is there, and that's why we didn't try to fight to get that pervious surface down, because we just thought we needed to lower it, or show an attempt, he said, to lower
No.
that.
You know, I appreciate where you're coming from here, but that's, in my mind, that's not good enough. And I mean, to cast aspersions on Donovan, he's a good friend, and business associate and what I would call a good friend. But you can do a whole lot better than what you've done. All you got to do is drive down North Shore Trail there. You know this. You yourself know
Oh,
this.
and I
you
live
can-
on the
and you
lake
can-
also.
This idea that we're doing better, I'm sorry, it's falling on deaf ears. These two in particular. They just are, because you can do better. And if I'm gonna vote to approve this project, there's gonna have to be, I'm not gonna vote to approve 37%. I can just tell you that right now. So you can, we don't want to delay you unnecessarily, but you're gonna have to, in my mind, you're gonna have to come up with a whole lot less impervious surface than what you've got there. And I think you can.
We can, like I said, we haven't, they
Yeah,
actually want to
think-
do that,
yeah,
but that was existing
there's
driveway, and
nothing
we
in-
just showed it.
Nothing in the city ordinance is about doing better. I'm sorry, it just, there isn't. And I
Yes.
apologize for being such a grouch tonight. I'm not normally this grouchy, but I just not gonna, 37% in this, when we haven't plumbed the depths of this, isn't gonna cut it.
Susan?
Been a developer here, the builder here for a long time.
Yep.
I am pretty confident that you can get to 25%.
I am too.
I'm quite confident that you can get to 25%. And I am willing to make a motion this evening to accept the variance on the 9.2, and that there will be a 25% impervious surface to get you going on the house, because I realize that you're trying to get things going before weather shuts you down.
I did put, once this happened, we did try to get it down as much as we could. We didn't have time to show it and what we were doing. I was at about 27 and a half. Is about with getting the driveway to keep it for the fire department so big, 11 feet, I believe it is. The turnaround coming out, shaving some of it, but it was down around 27 and a half is the lowest we could get it. Without allowing pervious pavers and things like that.
That doesn't even need to enter in the discussion, I don't think, so. The paver thing, I think you can do what needs to be done here, I'm convinced.
Kevin?
But if it was legal for me to show you what to do, I'd do it, but can't do that.
Have you looked at any type of a landscaping plan yet? Have you thought about the landscaping? Because obviously some forms of landscaping are going to affect the impervious surface as well.
As far as,
Well,
because that's the hard surface to get in there.
right.
is-
But I'm just
is all
saying,
we're
if you
dealing
start
with.
putting a rock and things like that around the house, that now affects your impervious surface. Are you using mulch? Are you, do you have some sort of a landscape plan that you're submitting with the building permit?
No,
That can affect the impervious as well.
Deck on there?
a deck will at some time be on there. But as a deck, they don't count that as a pervious surface, a deck.
That's correct.
But would that be then a variance request? Because it looks like we're awfully close to the lake. I assume it's gonna go on the lakeside,
Yep,
so you'd be coming back for
I
another
think we're,
variance.
what's it say, we're off the lake. I can't read that from.
I think it's about 80 feet.
The 50-foot setback is the setback for Forest
We're
Lake.
quite a ways away from
Okay,
the lake,
okay.
so-
It looks like you're okay, it looks like you're okay as far as
Just wanted to
a
make
deck
sure.
is concerned.
As long as you don't put plastic underneath it.
Yeah.
Yeah, if there's any type of
Just gravel.
plastic underneath, that's a challenge with landscaping. Just FYI.
It is tougher to get the, I think, down to 25 on these 50 wide lots because we need almost 25% of it just to put a standard driveway in. A 50 foot, it's only a little over 12 feet.
Yeah.
So
Well-
you don't pick up.
If he says that he's got a plan for 27%, I'd buy into that. I can show him how to get his other 0.5%.
Okay.
Well,
Mr.
yeah.
Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
Chair. I move that we grant the variance for the requested setback and that we modify the variance request and approve a 27% impermeable surface, which is a 2% variance from our code. And all of the remaining requirements of the watershed district, the city engineer, and other city entities must be met.
We have a motion, we have a second.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. We have any discussion on the motion? I would like to see, instead of 27, a bump it to 28 for this point that he got down to 27 point something. I would like a,
You made the point it was a 50-foot lot.
just a consideration to the motion. Okay. Any other discussion?
I agree with Mr. Chair. I think we're trying to shave a lot of impervious surface off, and it is a very narrow lot, but it is also a very long driveway from the street to the house. I know there's things we could do, but I would be more apt to the 28.
I'm not going to argue over a percent. I'm not.
I have a question. Under Robert's Rules of Order, the person who made the motion would have to accept
Yeah.
that as a friendly
Yes.
amendment, and she
Oh, yeah.
has?
No, she hasn't.
Okay.
napkin
Okay.
on occasion.
Takes a while, so bear with us.
Hey, look, it's been a long day, okay? My first.
And we
meeting
hit
was
the
at 6
2-hour
o'clock
mark
this
here,
morning.
so.
Yeah, I got my- yeah, Bill. I would consider 28 a maximum of 28, an acceptable friendly amendment.
Do we have, is the second,
Maximum.
does the seconder agree?
Agreed.
Do we have a motion and a second to make it 28%? Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Good luck with your project. Okay, we'll move to item number 10, which is 880 18th Street Southeast, a minor subdivision for Michael Kipka and Lori Shearer, and I apologize if I mispronounce your names. We will have a public hearing for this and to consider the minor subdivision application. Nathan, I assume you're presenting?
That is correct, Chair. Thank you. I'm going to switch the slide before you call me out on that. Sorry. Okay, this application is for the subject property located at 880 18th Street Southeast. This is another minor subdivision request. The applicants are the owners as well, Michael Kipka and Lori Scherer. Apologies to Lori, we spelled your last name wrong in the agenda, so my bad. The zoning district for this property is the single family zoning district. It is also located within the shoreland overlay that we're now very familiar with. The future land use designation is low to medium density residential. This site totals 1.3 acres. And it is the site of an existing single family home, which would be preserved on one of the parcels that are located on the property, parcel B, which you can see on the screen here. You see an existing home, an existing detached garage here, as well as the drive. Okay, so the applicants are looking to simply split this parcel with the new property boundary located east-west, just south of the principal structure there. In the staff report, you have a summary and a table of the proposed, I guess, metrics for both of these sites. The minimum lot area appears to be met by both parcels, as does the minimum lot width. Same for front yard setbacks, side yard setbacks, side street setbacks, and rear yard setbacks. Both properties, parcel B, which has development on it currently, it appears to be under 25%. Same for parcel A. Or parcel A would have to be developed at under 25 rather. This particular request is also reviewed against the criteria for denial that are established in the subdivision ordinance. Upon staff review, it did not appear that this request would meet those criteria for denial. The request was forwarded along to city staff for their review. Engineering review provided a few comments on the application. Park dedication was one comment, that park dedication fees shall apply prior to recording. A number of other comments, including that appropriate drainage and utility easements would need to be obtained for both parcels. So that is included as a criteria for approval. The watershed district would have to approve. And here, one of these I wanted to make sure to cover was, as part of a conditional approval, the city engineer would request some of the aggregate base area on parcel B north of the existing structure to be removed and a drainage ditch to be established along the west lot line to drain the area accordingly. And then grading plan submittal would be required to confirm. Public Works was also sent this for review. The Public Works Director provided several comments. One, that services are available in this area. The proposed lot would have some existing stubs that are available off 9th Avenue. City surveying staff were sent the applicant or the application for review. We have not received any comments at this time. Same can be said for the watershed district, who is also approached. So staff does recommend approval of this request conditional upon the criteria that are included in the staff report. There are 7 of those criteria. That is what I have formally prepared for you on this request. I'm happy to take any questions.
Susan?
Okay. Where this is, we've had some trouble with old water lines passing underneath properties. When Public Works says 3 services for this area, what they are saying is that there are 3 mud service location or slots available in this area. He's not saying that this is one of those lots that we've had trouble with in the past, where there are existing old services that were never properly removed. The first or the second?
I'm just rereading his comments. Apologies for the delay. I believe that what he means to say is that there are existing stubs available. I'm not sure that there are some on the property. I don't know if the applicant.
I'll just correct that right there. After talking with Public Works,
Ryan, stop talking. Hold on, it's really breaking up bad. This was the problem we had on Monday night. And is it possible for you to send your comments to me in the chat function and then I can read them out loud?
yes.
Okay. And then I'll have to talk with Dan about why we're still having this. Sorry.
That's my only real concern on this one, is making sure there aren't any of those old ugly ones.
I'm sure Ryan's comments will shed some light on that question.
Dennis?
You define, can you define what aggregate base area is to us?
I believe what city engineer is referring to in that comment is this class 5. This area where there's
That legally
gravel.
is for a gravel driveway.
It's
I
more a
believe
parking
that
pad.
might be, yeah,
I think it's a class 5 parking pad.
Okay.
engineering jargon.
So, and he wants, is it a drainage ditch here? So he's gonna is a requirement of this, at what point does that kick in? When it's actually platted, or, I mean, when you ask for a physical change to a site, like changing I mean, essentially what we're doing is he's asking the grades be changed on this site. I mean, when does that happen? Or,
There's a recording, so the city could require that prior to recording the minor subdivision as a condition to record it.
So
we
this
don't
is,
often get, I suggest, from the city engineer. I'm not-
here's what
I'm-
Ryan has to
I'm not trying
say.
to be difficult here. I'm just saying.
So he says that existing services don't cross proposed parcels. One service goes straight to the existing house. New proposed parcel A has 2 services stubs to the property.
Okay. Ryan knows the situation that I'm talking about.
Mhm.
We've got a couple of water lines that go under other people's houses.
Yeah, Pat just brought up the GIS.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
Dennis, so your question was?
Well, I'm just trying to figure out how this suggestion works into, an
Required
act.
in the motion.
Okay, so if you look, I'm looking at the staff recommendations that's covered sort of under number 3 there. it's still quite,
Must be removed.
quite
Some of it is.
some. I'm just
The city
wondering
engineer,
how
so,
we're gonna,
yeah.
how we're gonna
A
enforce
comment,
this.
a comment on this specific requirement. The city engineer would have to approve a plan showing the work.
Okay.
So that would be the trigger to be able
Okay,
to
that,
move forward.
that covers it.
Other questions? We just got done with a long discussion on 3 houses sharing a drive on a new application. Why on this parcel are we sharing a drive versus shrinking the lot to be a conforming 15,000 square foot lot and just slicing off the bottom end of that lot, retaining it with parcel B? I believe you're looking at a 30-foot wide easement and the lot is 80 wide. So that would give me 2,400 square feet. It's a little over 17,000, so we should still be above the 15,000. Is there a reason they wanted to put an easement in there? Or the city wanted an easement versus another driveway?
I don't know the rationale for that particular part of this site plan. I imagine that the applicants might have
No problem.
some information.
Any other comments? Hearing none, is the applicant present and wish to make a comment? Come up and state your name and address for the record.
Lori Share,
Mike.
880 18th.
Mike Kipka, same address.
Any comments you would like to add before we pepper you with questions?
The driveway, we were told we couldn't include that with parcel B. That it had to be just the driveway had to either be moved or it had to just be an easement. It couldn't be separated off and sold with parcel B, which was our first intention.
And then the other one was, we don't understand what you were talking about is,
Removing some of the aggregate.
you know. Well, it sounds like you want some sort of a drainage ditch or something along the west and there's no reason given for it here.
There's never, we've owned it for 5 years. We've been in the area for 22 years. There's never been any problems in that area.
Drainage,
So
because it kind of goes all downhill.
Ryan online?
You still here?
Would he happen to be able to give us?
Any
Thank-
insight, Ryan? Could you chat it, send it in text to me and I'll read it.
So the city requested that you don't split off that corner of parcel B.
Correct.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant?
Would you want to come in off of Ninth Avenue?
It works best for the drive, for where the garage is there. If there was a different driveway, it would be coming off of 18th, and it would have to wrap around to the back of the garage. So it'd be quite the extensive driveway.
and it would be about as long as yours. What you said yours is.
So it works better for the property that's existing to keep the driveway there. And we're perfectly happy with separating that parcel of A off to be without having
I'm just wondering if it wouldn't be easier to have parcel A come off of Ninth Avenue.
definitely.
So Ryan said that city needs to ensure drainage isn't an issue along the west lot lines. And with the information submitted and turnaround of application, a site review could not be completed prior to the meeting tonight.
Okay.
So he needs to do further work to really.
And I can, looking at the topo lines, I can understand why he's concerned about some of the drainage.
So would he meet with us there, or does he just show up and do his business? Or
I'm
how-
sure he would be glad to meet with you. He's a very reasonable man.
Yeah, and he says aerials and survey appear to show different objects on the northern parcel.
We had boats, pontoons
That were
stored up
shrink
there,
wrapped.
shrink wrapped, some of the neighbors. So that's probably what he was saying.
Well, what is your timeline on this?
ASAP.
Well, the reason I asked, you have a buyer for the lot?
No. No.
Okay. But you want to keep moving it along.
Yes, sir.
It would be nice to iron that out for you before, we can't really lock a decision in as far as that goes. And I think it would be nice to know if we could split off parcel A or get the reason why we can't.
Yeah.
So I would think that maybe if we had no other comments, we'll have the public hearing, but I would think that we may want to table this to get that data. The reason I would say a table is that you don't have to start the application fee over. And so it's just a lot easier.
And that would give you a chance to ask the city engineer about coming off a ninth with parcel A.
So we could work all of that out, but any other questions for the applicant at this time? So we'll continue on, we'll hold the public hearing, we'll get all of that part done, and then we'll figure what we're gonna do. So, thank you for your time. This is a public hearing. I ask anyone who wishes to speak to this application, please come up to the lectern and state your name and address for the record. Spend a couple minutes telling us about your thoughts on the application. Once we have heard everyone, we will close the public hearing and bring it back for a decision by the Planning Commission. So we will officially open the public hearing at 9:09 PM. Does anyone wish to address this application? Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Denise Volodkovich, and I'm at 1831 9th Avenue Southeast, right down the road. Should I begin with my question? Okay, so I'm just kind of concerned about the park that's right up from there. So and I'm just trying to understand, is the, where a house would be built, right? That's what they're looking to
Yes.
subdivide. And the middle parcel is where the house is now currently. Will there be a house in the back corner then also in B?
It's only two parcels, so there can only be two houses, including the one that's there.
Oh, so there would be one in A and then one in the back in B?
No. So there'd be a new house on parcel A, and that's all the development that's gonna be done.
Oh, okay, so there wouldn't be another house in the back?
No,
Okay,
no.
okay. And, I mean, that'd be all.
Parcel
It's
B is
fine.
that whole area of, even though
Okay.
there looks like a little lines going through it, that is
Yeah.
not the case.
Okay,
That is all the parcel remaining. It's about, parcel B is about twice as large as parcel A. So
Yeah.
the house
Okay.
that's there and the garage, all of that will stay.
okay,
Only parcel A will be developed.
okay. And then the driveway for parcel A, you said they're not quite certain where it would be yet, but right now it might be kind of conjoined with the parcel B driveway?
Our understanding currently is that the parcel A would share that driveway that they currently have.
Okay,
And the planning commission is asking, why is that versus having a separate drive? If you're here for the earlier discussion.
yeah,
It's just always
Yeah.
nicer if we don't have to do that.
yeah. Well, from a resident in the area, I would say it'd be better almost if they shared the driveway, just because the road along parcel A is very narrow. And it would almost be harder for cars coming out. So I'm just thinking about the park also. That's right adjacent to the driveway. There's the new park that was done, which I have grandchildren and I'm happy for it, for the park is there when they come visit, but knowing that another house is coming in, which I'm not opposed to, but just that I think that park, especially with more traffic on a driveway right there, we really need a fence around that park. And, I watch people play there and driving, it's probably only 10 feet from the playground area. I mean, I think about someone driving, looking at their phone, that sun comes up sometimes and it blinds you and, just swerving and hitting a child. Because there are kids at that park and there should be, but that park has no safety from that road, which is very, very close.
And that park is as you look at this on the screen, it's to the left of parcel
It
A?
is right there.
Okay.
It is right there. So I'm, everyone can do, build whatever they're going to do, but we can't bring any more houses or cars into that area without a fence around that park. I don't want to see a little kid hurt.
Thank you.
It's very tight roads down there. So that's all. How do I go about getting the fence there?
Talk to the Parks, Lakes and Trails Commission.
Okay, so you guys can make note of it though in this with another house and a driveway and, no? Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
And they meet monthly? I don't know when.
Third Tuesday of the month,
The third Tuesday of the
5:30
month?
PM.
Right here, correct?
Correct.
And they have public forum at the beginning of their meeting? Am I correct, Karen?
That's correct. If you want to leave your information with me after the meeting, I can get you in touch with our parks coordinator.
Anyone else wish to speak to this application?
My name is Paul Whitby. I'm the owner of 879 18th Street Southeast. As you can see, just by looking at this property and the topography, it's a very unique lot. It holds a lot of important factors for drainage in the entire lower part of the community. There is an easement that runs all the way through to the boat launch. You can't see it on this map, but that is somewhat of a drain field that a lot of the homes use. During the spring or during heavy rains, that thing fills up fast. And so I actually am going to be the one that suffers the most from any improper drainage, as I already have. There was a ditch portion that was on 18th Street Southeast, just on the opposite side. That's part of this property that was filled in with sand within the last couple of years. That pushed a major amount of water into my yard, in turn into my crawl space. So just from that little change, I'm thinking that when they recommend this removal of aggregate, that they're going to have to plan how to go under 18th Street Southeast into that retention area, and also make sure that it's adequate to hold the amount of water that is funneled down that way. That's a concern that I have. I do agree with separating the easement from parcel A for the convenience as a sale factor, as well as just building and future traffic. Being that the same vehicles would be pulling out in the same direction, I think that if a new house went in, I would recommend putting the driveway to 9th. It just seems like it would make better use of that property, as well as guarantee a more natural drainage towards mine, so that that can saturate into the soil and hopefully disperse before it hits my crawl space. Is the concern that I have. And then I was also curious if parcel A was going to be publicly sold or listed on the MLS? Which I
That's
suppose
entirely
would
up
be-
to the owner.
That's
Right.
not up
They
to
don't have to,
us.
they don't
Okay.
have to do that.
Correct, yeah, it's just something that I was thinking about.
Talk to them after the meeting.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, so those were my main concerns, just because I'm already seeing significant impact from the drainage of this property. So whoever does do that drainage, I just want them to know the significance of the impact to my actual structure.
And Ryan is still on the
He is. Ryan said he will be in the morning, and he can walk the property prior to meeting with Public Works. He's hearing all of the discussion, so he understands.
Sure.
But he'll be in the morning and he'll walk the property and
Okay.
take
And I
everything
am,
into consideration.
you know, I'm home most of the time, so. And if for any reason he wants to ask me any questions, he's definitely welcome to do so. So we're just looking at a division of parcel A. And then you, Nathan, you mentioned what type of buildings can go in there?
single-family home.
Okay, and I thought there was kind of a mention of size or density.
your size, the size of the home would be subject to some of the other site design criteria that are established in the code.
Sure,
For
but
example, the
you-
impervious surface maximum setbacks, those kind of
Correct.
things kind of
Yep.
drive.
Yeah, I've gotten a little familiar with that. Also, I want to note, thank you for your consideration and community service, all of you. So it seems like you really care. But what I was curious is you did mention something as to the residential density of the structure. Is it like single family or multifamily?
It would have to be
or
a single family home.
Single family? Okay. Okay, good. Because I just want to make sure, just because I do intend on living here for quite some time, that what I can anticipate is going to be in there. And I think that pretty much covers it. And is parcel A in the future, if purchased by an individual, would that be subject to a potential division again?
No.
Too small. Good. I think that takes care of everything that I was curious about.
The rule on lot size is we only create conforming lots. So they wouldn't be large enough, so they would not be able to subdivide that lot.
Okay. Yeah, that's good, because the neighborhood we live in is already very congested. And I understand everybody wants to be right on the lake, but it seems like that was kind of a little bit less thinking that went in there as far as that goes. I just want to make sure we weren't going to be pushing roadways within the next couple of years to accommodate multifamily home or duplex or two homes on that parcel. So I think that that's all I have to say.
What was your address? Is it 1808?
879 18th Street Southeast. You can see my driveway.
879?
Yeah, I
Okay, I
face
see it. Yeah.
directly at the front of
Yeah,
880.
you're directly west of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
Well, where is this, you mentioned something across 18th where
yeah,
stormwater
so-
would go. Is that along the back of your property, along the north side of your property?
Yeah, yep, that's where it would be. And I'd say it's maybe 20 feet wide and runs the rest of the block, and then there's
Yeah,
the
it shows
horseshoe.
up on that little colored thing that you
Mhm.
got on the front there, Nathan.
And that can hold a decent amount of water. It does a really great job. But it's just
blow that
something
picture
that,
up.
because there is a,
Yeah, see, it's right going west from the word 18th right there, 18th Street. See where that is there?
there's
vertically?
that whole, it's the city easement, so it's the only box that's not numbered. It just abuts our properties.
Yeah, no, we see,
Yeah.
okay, so that's where. All right.
Yeah, and through
But
the
you're saying
trees.
that you're getting water in your.
Yeah,
in
into the
your
crawl space. So when we do have heavy rains, the water from this property, and it's just the way that it is. It just runs
Yeah,
down and
there's no curbs there. to
there's no
control it. Yeah.
curbs. All the sand from Ninth ends up in my driveway and, all the water from that property comes over. And there was a bit of a ditch. Every spring it would fill with water and the ducks would come and swim in it. And it would hold the water and disperse it nicely, but that was filled in. And then now that water just comes directly into my yard and then pushes further into my home. And depending on the precipitation with spring thaw, I can see some pretty good amount of water in my crawl space, and it takes a while to get that smell out of the house. So that was my only concern, is if there was any way to, get that drainage to be a little bit better. I think it would be good for everyone and the whole lake, the community, and potentially the future purchaser of parcel A.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you. Sure.
Say something about the sand. It was an ankle buster coming off the street. We did fill in a little bit of sand, not out to screw any neighbor by no means. It's been that way for, again, 20-some years that we've been up there. So I don't know what else to say. We didn't do that
Right, I understand your leveling.
as far as water going into your basement or anything. I would never want to do that because I wouldn't want it done to myself, but it was an ankle buster. We put rocks there because people on the 4th of July, it's a tight area down there, and they would tend to park their whole car up onto that grass, and they would leave out of there, and they would take all that mud and just go, and then we got ruts that deep. So then I think you followed suit with what I did. I put some rocks there. You can't park there. So
Yeah, I did have like a 28-foot fifth wheel camper parked in my yard, and I'll tell you what, it took up the whole yard, because I don't have a very big one. So that's where I thought, wow, we have to figure something out, but that's just all part of that community congestion.
Thank
you. My main concern being tonight, but then after that drainage was brought up, I want to discuss it.
Thank you. And just for everyone's knowledge, Ryan, who we're talking about, Ryan Goodman is a city engineer. He's very good to work with, very knowledgeable. His city's been working with us for many, many, many years, so he'll do a good job. Does anyone else wish to speak to this application? Karen, do we have anyone online who would like to speak?
I don't have anyone else.
I'll ask one more time. Does anyone wish to speak to this application? Karen, still no one online?
No one.
So we will close the public hearing at 9:23 PM. Bring it back to the planning commission for discussion and a motion.
So
Dennis?
I'm curious about kind of what we can do. I mean, are we gonna have to table this thing to get it? I mean, it just seems to me that we should get rid of the, what do you call it? The thing for the drive and bring that parcel B out to 9th Avenue there. I just, as long as we can do it and maintain a legal lot for Lot A, that just seems to me to be a better solution.
Before I make a motion, I'll give Nathan his homework on this, is to get a little better definition of this sum and what this drainage easement needs to be on that property. And then an understanding of why parcel A needs to stay connected, share that driveway, or can we bust it out? Anything else you wanted to know?
And as you may have heard from the previous discussion, that if you're selling parcel A, the lender is going to want significantly more guarantee on how the driveway would be shared, and it would be to your benefit to make it a little cleaner and a little easier.
So we're good? So I'll make a motion to table this application. Do we need a date? Yeah, we gave them that, right? To our, are we gonna have a meeting in 2 weeks, Nathan? On the 27th?
We can. It seems like we might, because we have a couple tabled items, so I think we can address the tabled items in that timeframe.
Yeah, okay. So I would motion that we table it until our October 27th meeting.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. It's a non-debatable motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries.
with that being said, can we put a for sale sign up?
Yeah, my personal opinion, and it's an opinion, I would wait to know and have definition on what you're selling. But thank you for all attending this evening. Next up is item 11, Birchwood Estates Concept Plan. Nathan?
Thank you, Chair. This item is associated with the concept plan. This is the second iteration. I think the Planning Commission may be familiar with this site and the recent proposal for a subdivision upon it. The applicant for this concept plan review is John Anderson on behalf of Eternity Homes. I believe John is the last remaining attendee this evening in your audience. The zoning district for this area is MXR1, which is mixed residential, single family and townhomes. The future land use designation for this area is low medium density residential. So this is the second iteration of a concept plan. A few elements of the plan have changed since it was first. Thank you, Pat. I'm switching over to the concept plan review. I'm batting 1 for 3. The elements of this plan that have changed from the previously reviewed plan, which was in June of this year, are the street configuration, the lot sizes and the configuration of those lots, the overall number of lots, and some changes to the site plan around wetland impacts. Now, just kind of remind you that concept plan is a requirement of applicants who are looking to do plats for major subdivisions. The action that is requested of the Planning Commission this evening is simply to review this revised concept plan and to provide the developer with feedback regarding the conformity of this development to city standards. Concept plan review does not convey any legal development rights to the applicant, so you're not making any final decisions this evening that have any legal repercussions. So going into the review here, in terms of land use, this proposal is for a mix of different, I guess, lots. There's a mix of more traditional single-family home lots and essentially what are considered to be detached townhomes that have a common area that's under HOA management. The lot mix, there are a total of 71 units proposed in this plan. There is a mix of large and small detached townhomes, which large and small is really a difference of several hundred square feet in this case. There are single family lots that are 65 feet wide that are proposed, 20 of those. Single family lots that are 70 feet wide, 16, and 80-foot wide lots, which meet the minimum lot width for this zoning district. There are 11 of those proposed. So the total area for this property is 37 acres. Again, there are 71 units, which leads to a net density of approximately 2.3 units per acre. Notably, this density is below the range that is required by the concept plan for this particular area of the city. But if you view the city on the aggregate, the city is meeting its density goals. This is in part due to a lot of the density created by townhome or apartment buildings and the like that have been recently approved. So looking at some of what we would expect the deviations to be for this property, I've provided a table in the staff report that has essentially blue cells that are shaded according to where deviations will be required. So I can kind of run through the lots here. So for the proposed 65-foot wide lots, the lot area, the width, the setbacks would all need deviations. As you go into the 70 and the 80-foot lots, there are fewer deviations that would be required as part of the planned unit development. In terms of the proposed detached townhomes, there would still be a couple of deviations that would be required. Notably, the setback between the structures is listed as 15 feet. That would be as opposed to 20, which is required by city code. Moving along to parkland dedication, it should be noted that in the top right corner of this site, this would be on the northeastern part of the site, there is a park area that would be approximately just over 1 acre that's proposed. For this site, there would be a requirement for parkland dedication of just over 3 acres. So city code does allow for a combination of land to be dedicated, provided that is also accompanied by a cash in lieu of the other remaining portion that's to be dedicated. So we kind of discussed a little bit the consistency with the comp plan. The land use itself is consistent with the future land use designation. The city engineer has provided a number of comments in a memo that's attached to the staff report. In terms of staging of the development, the applicant is here this evening, so I'm sure that they have some more information on that. although I didn't see any that was provided in the application. In terms of next steps for this development and the process moving forward, you're obviously, we're in the concept plan phase right now. Preliminary PUD and preliminary plat could be processed at the same time, followed by final PUD and final plat. So this, again, the action that's needed is for a discussion of this development and a review of the whether it meets the city standards. So with that, I can take any questions, and I know that the applicant is also here.
Any questions for Nathan?
I do. So am I understanding the way that this is proposed, there would be a need to amend a current zone plan?
That's a good question. So the way that this is proposed is it would require what's called a planned unit development. That's an overlay district that's created as part of a process that the applicant will go through, which is at the same time as their subdivision. A planned unit development allows for, and I'm speaking sort of in generalizations because there's a lot that's required in this process, but generally it allows for deviations from what the requirements are in the city code, provided that the applicant gives the city something. So there's a kind of a give and take. The city lets developers deviate from the code, but there are some public benefits that are expected from the development.
Okay, so then how is the public made aware of that, that exchange of we get this if you get this?
Yeah, another good question. So there is obviously a pretty standard public hearing process that's required for major subdivisions. Part of that is this concept plan review where it's kind of initially discussed at the planning commission. There isn't a notification process with this particular application, but there are neighborhood meetings that are required of the developer through the plating process. There is a pretty substantial amount of like public hearing notices to be sent out to surrounding property owners. They're published in the paper. Some cities will publish them on social media or the website, on project pages and things like that. Depends on the development.
Susan?
Nathan, the parkland dedication is not considered a public benefit because we require that of everybody. All right, so that just is what it is. Has the developer talked to you about what he considers the significant benefits to the city of, again, the significant changes he's looking at?
I haven't had a discussion with the developer about that particular question, so.
Other questions for the city?
This is probably too early to, I don't mean to nitpick here, but I'm just curious about, there's 3 lots that are on the northwest face of that largest pond. It's kind of shaped like a hand there, or a wrench. Just down, move your cursor down. Those 3 lots right there. They look a little suspect size-wise. Okay, so that's part of the variance that they're asking for.
Unless you build tiny homes.
Yeah, I'm just kind of trying to zoom in here, sorry.
They must be counting the pond as.
Yeah, their lot lines go all the way through.
Yeah, their lot lines are.
So I see that now.
They can
The lot lines
squeeze
do
some
go
on
all
the
the way through.
setbacks.
Yep.
Okay, all right, that's how they're doing that. So this is some of the biggest lots in the development.
Other questions? Would the applicant like to come on up and say a few words? As you state your name and address for the record, please.
Yeah, good evening. My name is John Anderson. I represent Eternity Homes. Address is 14832 Estate Avenue Southeast, Prior Lake. And as Nathan said, we were before you guys in June, I guess it was. I think it was an online meeting at the time versus in person. And I think I was a little late because I had some computer problems getting logged into the meeting, but did get eventually logged into it. So what we had previously was a concept plan that was similar to this. If you remember 204th Street, that stubbed into the west property line, ran straight across and connected with the north-south road. And there was another cul-de-sac that would basically opposite of the one that's there that ran east-west. As we move forward with that concept plan, there was some discussion on lot sizes and different things like that. If you remember in that lot layout, we had lots at 60 feet wide, kind of down that southeast corner. There was feedback that the planning commission didn't like those. We did change that and went with 65-foot lots, a 70-foot lot, and an 80-foot lot kind of on that northwest corner. And we got the detached townhomes that basically mirror what's in the Hawthorne Heights development right now. As we started designing that from a design standpoint, from a grading plan, engineering end, and looking at wetland impacts, that layout, the way it was laid out, ended up being around 75,000 yards short of dirt. So we had to do some reconfiguring. We actually had to increase our pond sizes, and that's why you see 3 large ponds in blue on this concept plan. Those ponds will be used to generate dirt. They are oversized as far as the volume requirement for stormwater management. They're basically that big from a dirt generation standpoint. We do have some high water tables out there. There is a little bit of elevation up in the north and northeast side of the site, but on the south end there, it's fairly low, fairly flat. And to try to build these streets and these building pads, we needed that dirt. So we had to come up with a way to better increase the size of those ponds. So the north-south road, as it kind of went north, got shifted to the west a little bit to increase that pond on the east side. The road alignment down there where we had the cul-de-sac previously was changed to enlarge the size of that pond to get better volume when we dug that pond out. We also looked at the wetland impacts, and we had a lot more wetland impact with that layout than what we're showing here. What we can do with our wetland impacts here is all based on different criteria and different wetlands. I know we talked earlier about values or the type of wetland. Some of these wetlands are actually farmed wetlands. They're very low quality type wetlands. There are some nicer ones which we're not impacting at this point on this project. The big pond on the south end is actually going to be a different elevation pond bottom wise. So where the wetland is, we can do that where we can impact it and deepen that, but it will ultimately be a wetland with the pond area on the outsides of that being deeper to generate more dirt at that point. So that's kind of why the layout changed from a street standpoint. From a lot size standpoint, we've tried to, create as many lots. We have reduced the number from what it previously was with this layout, just because we have to have bigger ponds and a different street layout. So the lot number has actually gone down from what it previously was. This, the previous concept also went to the the park commission, and they looked at the park and they wanted to flip it to the west side. Problem is when we did that and having to shift that road to the west, you also have to look at what's going on in the north. And I don't know if Nathan's seen anything yet, but I do know that property is also under contract with another developer builder. And we have had some very minor discussions. So we've kind of looked at what they're doing. We've matched the roadway at this point. And if the park ends up going on the west side, it gets smaller from a usability standpoint because there is a wetland there that's being, saved as well. There is a wetland on the east side, but when you look at the overall function, we do feel it's better on that northeast corner. So we can expand that park to the north, and ultimately you can expand it to the east and northeast. As those other 2 properties, east and northeast of us develop, you could have 4 properties bringing parkland together to create a bigger parcel of land. A lot of that land to the north is wooded, and there are some also wetlands scattered in there. The land to the to the east is kind of like farm fields and things like that. So we are looking to flip that park back to the east, northeast corner there. The park itself is 63,000 square feet, so roughly 1.5 acres. There's a little wetland there that's unusable, but most of that park land is open, a farm field right now, so it would be nice and usable from that standpoint. As far as the plan unit development goes, based on the comment about benefits, Donovan Hart, the previous planner, and I had quite a few discussions on this stuff. He actually went and looked at some different projects that we've been a part of down in the Lakeville area with some of our units. This had to do with setbacks and things like that, which are shown in Nathan's table in the report. And basically there's a trail that we're proposing on that western kind of property line that would eventually kind of run north go along that wetland up in the northwest corner and then eventually connect over into that park. So people could come off the trail on 202nd Street of the county road out there, head north and get to that parkland on a trail versus walking necessarily on a sidewalk down through all those driveways. This plan doesn't show it, but it's meant to. The cul-de-sac on the southeast corner would also have a trail connection off that cul-de-sac to connect that trail along the county road. So somewhere in that lot, there would be a small trail connection there just to connect that cul-de-sac. As far as the lot sizes go and some of the setback items, in the table, there's a couple items I just want to touch base on real quick. Under the 65-foot proposed lots, it has a rear setback of 25 feet. That can be 30 feet. I think that the concept plan does say 25, but we are okay with 30 feet on those. Most of the 65-foot lots are basically the ones in the southeast corner going up to where that pond area is. And I do know some of those have longer lot lines, and there's lots like that in Chestnut Creek to the northeast, which where Eternity's building up there, has a lot of lots in that same similar design. And what we're looking there is that's a fairly wooded area. And we're trying to eliminate tree removal as much as possible. And that's why we're also asking for the 25-foot front setback for those 65-foot lots to push the house forward. And then that way we can have an extra 5 feet to potentially save additional trees. We're also looking at putting those as either a slab on grade or a split entry product, which will allow us to not have to fill as much to grade the full basement type of lot. And by doing split entry, that also minimizes our grading impacts in the rear yard, which also allows us to save trees in that area. Because there's some pretty nice trees back in there in some cases. So we're trying to do as much as we can as possible along that wetland edge, and then saving trees along the county road out there. So those lots on the cul-de-sac, I guess it's like 1 through 4, mostly 5 might have some, but there'd be a tree buffer between the county road and those backyards, which would remain and be a nice amenity for those lots. So that 30-foot setback would be okay. And then the 80-foot lots, it's got a 20-foot corner lot setback. We're okay with doing the standard 25-foot there too. So all those 80 lots are meant to basically meet all your requirements in your standard district, the MXR1 district. And then as far as the 70-foot lots go, that's kind of that middle block of single family lots there. And when we design this, we don't necessarily look at the lot width. We look at what the pad width is ultimately going to be. So if you take a look at the 7.5-foot setbacks or the 10, the 65-foot lots will have a 50-foot wide pad. The 70 would have a 55-foot wide pad, and the 80-foot lots would have a 60-foot wide pad. So even though you may have a wider lot with bigger setbacks, it's the pad width is ultimately what you can build from a house standpoint. So we have 3 different widths on the product type that would go in there. And that kind of corresponds with the type of lot we're looking at, with the smaller ones being a split entry type product mostly, and the larger ones would be potentially a full basement type walkout lot, which you could get the higher end type housing up in that northwest corner where we'd have them backing up to the wetlands and open space and things like that. The detached townhomes, I guess, we got 2 different lot sizes. The north side of 204th Street would be a 50-foot wide by 60-foot deep buildable pad. The ones on the south side would be a 40-foot wide by 70-foot deep pad. And this is where Don and I had a lot of conversation about the setbacks, the width, the space between the units and things like that. I know he went down and took pictures of some neighborhoods. I also provided him with some more. And I also did bring some drawings of some of those houses. I can just pass these around if that's what you want to do. But these 3 here, I don't know if you just want to take a quick look. That's all 3 of those are a very similar product, or be the same product we would build on the 40 by 70-foot pads. We're doing that in 2 other communities right now, one in Inver Grove Heights and one in Lakeville. And those are designed with 15 feet between the structures. They have the common area around it, which will be maintained by open space and association, which is exactly what we're doing here. And then the 50 by 60s would be the same as what Hawthorne Heights is. And we have built quite a few of those detached ones in the Hawthorne Heights neighborhood in years past. We actually have a model home that's up on 204th Street, 2 lots in. It was the last lot that Eternity bought and built that with the plan that they eventually sell into this neighborhood out of that model home until this neighborhood got up and running. So that would be the same product that you'd see in there, but then we also want the southern side to be the 40 by 70. It's a little bit deeper house, but it's a little bit narrower on the front as well. So with that being said, that's kind of what we're looking at. Originally, we were hoping to have some grading this fall, but with the complications we ran into with wetland impacts and dirt balance and things like that, then having to reconfigure this, we felt it was best, talked with Nathan, to come back before you guys just to, show you this plan. It's, it's similar, but it's not exactly the same as the previous one you saw. So with that, that's about all I have right now, but I can take any questions you may have, so.
Questions for the developer? Susan?
And I'm going back to the planned unit development. I understand the things that you guys are getting, that where you're saving the trees, those are really going to help you market those lots, especially the ones that are up on County Road 50. I understand the benefit to y'all of doing the ponds the way you are. I'm looking for, what's the city getting? What in a planned unit development, you're getting additional lots, you're getting additional density, you're getting some things that you need. Are you looking at price point 50% AMI or what would the city be getting?
When you say price point 50% AMI, what do you mean by that? I guess I don't know what that is.
One of the things that the city considers is maybe we're getting something that is more affordable and an affordable home and AMI, average median income. Are you looking, where are your price points on this? Would we consider these to be affordable homes, at AMI, lower than AMI, or are you looking at higher price point homes?
From a AMI, I guess I don't know what that number is, so I couldn't tell you that. From a price point standpoint, we could, like I said, materials and labor costs right now are killing the building industry from a price standpoint. And we're doing our best to keep our prices low. I could probably get you what the model home is. I have the Prater book. I was looking through it earlier, and that's got that model home in there, what that range would be. That'd be a single family detached. We are building, we have, I think, one lot left in Chestnut Creek. We just sold our last model in Chestnut Creek and probably built 30 homes in there approximately over the last few years. And in there, we had some of the higher 2 stories getting up into that 500-600 range, which is obviously not affordable to a lot of people, but in the new construction world, that's a very common price you see out there nowadays for a big 2-story home. The slab on grade detached units, probably going to be starting in that 400s range. And I don't know if we can get any lower on pricing than those numbers. That's just the reality of the home building market with where we're at nowadays. The biggest thing to reduce price is more lots. And if we could go with all those 65 footers, we'd do that in the whole project, but your zoning doesn't allow for that. But that's the best way we can get affordable homes or cheaper homes, I should say. Basically, the only way is to get additional lots out there because it spreads out the overall cost over more units. So that's kind of the reality of it.
Are getting significantly more lots than we usually would say. And so my pushback is going to be if the city is giving you a significantly increased density with additional lots and the smaller lots, then I really need to think about what the city's getting. Because, okay, you're getting more houses. So that means more tax revenue. Well, really, the taxes that we get from a house, the house costs us in services, in police and fire and street maintenance and yada, yada, about 1.5 times what we get from the taxes from that property. That's the national average. And I think we're pretty much in there. So it's not like more houses on a small area are a benefit to the city as is. So if we're looking at the PUD, what I'm looking for from y'all is in exchange for giving you the smaller lots and some of the things that you're looking for, as you bring your concepts forward, as you do some more work on this, what's in it for us too?
What are you looking for? I guess that's the biggest question. I mean, we're putting that extra trail connection in, that's something that Donovan did say would be an additional benefit.
And that's a benefit. That's
Correct.
kind of what Susan is bringing up,
Yeah.
is what are the benefits? So you're going to put a trail in That's a benefit. Do you develop the park potentially? Instead of just giving the land and some fee? Some of those things that you can also do in that arena, that makes it a benefit to the city to move forward with the project as such. Your timing with the size of these lots is ironic because we just recently met with the city council and the EDA on lot sizes. And
Correct.
There's a lot of discussion on, we're gonna have some later tonight on
Yeah, I
lot
seen that-
sizes.
Yeah, I seen that on the agenda. I was gonna stay for that, actually.
It won't be that exciting, but you're welcome to stay.
Yeah.
But, so there will be discussed, but, Susan is correct that we do expect to give and take on this. And this is something that Nathan can help you with, maybe Ryan, Parks can help you with it. Some stuff that other developers have done that the city has found beneficial.
Yeah, no, and I've done plan unit developments in other communities. The reality is, looking at this parcel, if we had to go with the 80 feet wide by 15,000 square feet on the whole parcel, we won't develop this parcel. There's no way we can make it work economically with those size of lots. It just, you don't get enough density to offset the cost. And, I'm doing developments in about a dozen communities right now, different approvals and going through different reviews. And it's kind of the same thing everywhere. It's so expensive to put the infrastructure in. And everyone wants to get to that smaller lot, because if you got an 80-foot lot or a 60-foot lot, you can pick up more as you go down the street for the same amount of cost for the street, other than, some extra services, but that's minor in the overall scheme of things. So
Right.
I don't know what your exact MXR1 district, but I was just kind of curious. That's why I was going to stick around to kind of listen, because it's a big thing. And to make this work with the amount of wetlands and the impacts we've got, that's where we've been struggling, trying to make this work feasibly and make a layout work where we get enough units with the dirt balance and the wetland impacts and things like that. The other thing that's gone up that you may not know is to purchase the wetland credits, the banking credits. That's like double the cost we can get on the south side of the Twin Cities right now, what it is up here, which is, it's not 10,000 more, it's hundreds of thousands more. And so it's a cost factor. And, it's the plan unit developments, I get it. You get more lots, city needs to get some benefits. It's kind of a trade-off or a bargain or whatever you want to call it. But it comes a point where it's too much is too much and numbers don't work. You can't make the project work. You can't move forward. So not saying we can't do any more. I'm just saying that's part of where we're at. And like I said, we wanted to move this forward a long time ago, but we haven't been able to make the numbers work financially. And this is the most recent layout that we can kind of work and be in the ballpark. So that's been the toughest challenge right now. And we've actually worked with the seller of the property and had discussions and done things with our contract to change some of that stuff as well. So.
And we like development here.
We
So
do.
we don't want to discourage this development by no means, but we want to make sure that you understand where we're coming from. So when
Yeah.
we see the preliminary plat, which would be the next time we see it, that you're
Mhm.
not, we didn't come out of left field for you.
Yeah, no, I understand that. And like I said, there's engineering comments. I read through all those. They all were pretty common stuff. We've already worked on a lot of what he had said. So we're aware of what's going on. So,
But it's also not the job of the city to make sure that any developer can come in here and just, and maximize. I mean, we have to protect the interests of the folks that are already here.
correct.
We have a vision for the city. And so it's not really our job to make your numbers work.
I understand that. Yeah. The big
That's why
reason.
they call it speculative development.
Yeah, the big reason why Eternity looked to purchase this is they were building in Chestnut Creek. And it got to the point where they're pretty much out of lots, and phase 2 has not progressed for a lot of the similar reasons we just talked about, costs and things like that. And it got to the point where they wanted to keep building in Forest Lake. The owner, Pat Flynn, actually lives on Forest Lake himself, even though the office is in Farmington. He has a home up here on the lake and wants to stay in this community. And so he goes, let's go buy this property and try to develop it ourselves. And we've done other developments in other communities, and that's why we're moving forward. But this one has definitely been a challenge, trying to get the thing to work from the right standpoint and get the density with all the wetlands in there and figure all that stuff out, so. I guess before we go, the lot sizes, you know, I'm not talking about necessarily what the benefits are, but does anyone have an opinion on the setbacks, the lot sizes, what's being proposed there? I know Donovan and I had a lot of conversation before Nathan came along on that stuff over the last few months, so.
Kevin?
Yeah, I'll just comment, you know, I really like what you've done with this. You know, we kind of looked at this earlier, and when we talked about it before, I love the mix of the 65-foot, the 70-foot and 80-foot lots. You had mentioned a couple of them, we could change some of the setbacks, which I think that would be better. I love the contoured roads, you know, giving some character to the development, just instead of straight roads. I love the ponds in there. I love the trails. You know, I'm 100% on board with this. In my opinion, there's a couple of tweaks that I'd like to see, but I think it's a great concept plan.
Okay. Was there any specific, oh, sorry.
I think the lot size, the setbacks would be one. I love, I don't love, but I like the 25-foot setbacks, especially in the townhouses, and 30-foot with the sidewalks. I think closer than that is a real problem, getting cars in and, you know, parking in a driveway, things like that. So obviously, you know, it doesn't look like they could be any deeper, but I think 30-foot with a sidewalk or 25-foot is sufficient. The side setbacks don't really bother me. You know, I see hundreds of developments. I see lots of houses, and, you know, that's just the way it is. I agree 100% with you. The only way to develop these pieces of land today is you got to get as many houses in as you can, because it's so dang costly. And we're either going to be on board with it as a city and get development, or they're going elsewhere. So as we look at our MXR1 changes and some of our density changes, this is kind of what we're seeing. And in more cities, we're seeing small, by far, much smaller lots than 80-foot lots. And even 70-foot lots, you don't see many of anymore. So I'm on board with it.
Yeah, we're doing 3 or 4 communities right now where they're 40-foot building pads, 50-lot development in Emerald Grove Heights, and they're 40-foot building pads. And they're selling as fast as you can go with them. I mean, it's hot because you can get the price down 50, 60 grand compared to a bigger lot. And that's the difference right now. So not saying we're looking to do this here, but I'm just saying it is a big thing up there.
But my concern on one of the lots, and I'm generally on page with this development, but my concern would be on these narrower lots is what's the streetscape look like? I'm not a huge fan on a 65-foot wide lot having a 3-car garage being 30-foot of the frontage and a door. And then I pretty much have filled up the building pad.
Yeah.
And so 2-car garage front with you want to put a 3rd stall behind and 1 of the 2, that's fine, but I don't want to see all garage doors like you do in some of them townhouse developments. It just.
Yeah, so you're right. The 40-foot pads, it's pretty much garage and then 10 feet, and that's your front. The 50-foot pad, though, if you got a 3-car garage, it's a 30 or 32-foot wide garage. You still have 18 to 20 feet of house that actually, and I brought one of those plans right here. Pass this around. This is it's called the Cape Cod model. That's a 50-foot wide house. And that's selling in Lakeville right now in the 700,000 to 800,000 range. And if you look at it, it's a 50-foot wide house that would fit on those 65-foot lots. Now that's a full basement, so we wouldn't build it on a split entry lot, but that tells you what you can build on a 50-foot wide house. And that's a very popular, our most popular home that Eternity builds, actually, to be honest with you. So width wise, that would fit on that 65-foot lot.
If we're agreeable to a 7.5-foot
Correct.
side.
If you're agreeable with that, yeah.
And there's some angst here with a volunteer fire department and the length of time that the more spacing we can get, the better chance we have of saving the adjoining structures.
Yeah.
Just the way it is, you know, so. But that I find looks pretty nice. And if we could send all of those to Karen for the record, it would be great.
And I got a few other ones that are just other examples, couple split entry homes that we potentially build in the Sprint, and then another big 2-story that would go back on the larger lots. It's a 57-foot wide house, so it'd fit on those big ones only. So I don't know if I just give them or do you want to look at them quick, or I'll give them to Nathan then, so.
Other comments for the developer today? Go ahead, Geneva.
Well, when I'm thinking about new communities, I'm thinking about walkability and bicycles and parks and things like that as we move towards a society that really should be more about let's all get together and that kind of stuff. I see sidewalks some, but I don't see anything in the cul-de-sac and I don't see anything like a bicycle path. I mean, there's a trail, but where does it go? And I know, and when you talk about the parks, you're kind of talking about maybe working with another person who's building out there and combining whatever park space they were supposed to have with the park space you were supposed to have. And that just makes it so young families have to go further for a park if we go that way of thinking. And I think they'd rather have smaller parks, more centrally located in their little communities than having to have to go further just to make one bigger one for someplace else. I mean, that's just my thought. But I think it needs to be smaller in general instead of trying to combine some of these things that you're talking about combining.
That wasn't my suggestion. That was the Park Commission suggestion, to try to combine them with the properties to the north and potentially to the east.
Mhm.
So, and I do understand that, because if you have 4 parcels and you have 4 small parks in each one, you have potentially maintenance issues from a city standpoint, that you're taking care of too many versus going to one park that's centrally located in the whole area. And, you know, a small park in the middle of this is great, but there's also that maintenance standpoint that cities have to deal with. And I live in the community of Prior Lake, and they have 2 times as many parks as Savage, which is right next door. And they're having major issues where they're actually looking at retiring parks. They can't afford to maintain all their parks anymore. And they have too many little ones in every single neighborhood versus some that were centrally located. So they're having possibly up to 6 to 7 of them that they're going to just basically shut down because they don't have the money to pay for them.
Okay.
So that's part of the discussion why the Planning Commission, or not, our Parks Commission
Fair enough.
looked at that. And I'm not saying that's the way you have to go as a city, but that came actually from the Parks Commission. So.
Well, and Geneva, just for your edification for letting nothing else, the parks is really looking, where do they want parks? How big do they want them? What neighborhoods need them? Where do we already have plenty of them? And it's been, from what I understand, quite a lively discussion. But we've pretty much stepped half back from that, and what the parks want, we kind of let them go with. But we want to make sure we get what the parks want also. So the parks will make a recommendation, and then if it's not incorporated the way they wanted to here, we can put some of those stipulations in then when we see the site plan next.
Okay, then I have a question, and this is more logistical for me to understand. How do you elicit what residents might want? I mean, through open forums and things like this are fine, but sometimes when developments like this go in, after the fact, the residents are all up in arms about how did that get put there? We had no idea it was coming. And they just get all upset about it.
Well, the area residents nearby will get notices that there's going to be a meeting on it. It'll come to us, it'll be our meeting for the preliminary plat. Like, sometimes I gotta go through all the stages, and that would be probably the first real notice. And I believe we have an expectation I will hold a community meeting.
Yeah, that's correct. That one really good way to address some of the concerns of the surrounding neighborhood, because obviously you're not gonna be able to ask people how to move there yet, but the surrounding neighborhoods will have access to that community meeting. And that's intended to serve as an opportunity for them to provide the developer with feedback of what they want to see. And ideally the feedback is implemented.
And the nearest neighborhood here is that neighborhood that's between Goodview and this.
To the west.
Hawthorne Heights to the west.
Any other comments for the developer? Does Nathan, do you have everything you need?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for your time this
Thank
evening.
you.
Any other questions you have for us?
None right now. Our next step would be to, I think, is this going to city council too for review and park commission, or
I will go to the Parks Commission
Parks
next.
Commission? And then if everything's good, we're trying to get preliminary plat in and submitted so we can start reviewing that. So we're I think we're at a layout where we're comfortable with the dirt situation, that we can make things work and go from there, but we'll have to, discuss the planning and development benefits and things of that nature, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to our new number 12, which is 794 15th Street Southwest, a discussion. We had nothing in our packet on this, so Nathan, I assume you have pearls of wisdom for us.
Thank you, Chair. So I produced essentially a cover page of a staff report. It's just to kind of prime this specific discussion. A discussion of the MXR1 standards it's timely.
Wait.
Oh,
We
sorry.
moved. It's the next.
Oh, I apologize. I'm looking at the wrong item. Yeah, so there was going to be a discussion of the parking lot improvements. That's number 12. Let me go back to my agenda. Referring to 794 15th Street Southwest.
We did the fence thing earlier,
Yes.
and I'm guessing you've got parking lot things you want to talk about?
Yeah, so I suggested that we also provide an update at the next meeting that will be following up with the fence CUP or IUP or whatever the determination is that we arrive to. I propose that we provide an update to you then, but I can tell you what I know at this time. We, as staff, have identified obviously that there were some unpermitted improvements on that property. The property owner constructed, I'm going up to the survey here. So the existing conditions of the site, this is a survey that was submitted in 2019, in December of 2019. This shows the existing gravel that was on the site when the current owner purchased it. And the next plan shows the extent of the improvements. So as you can probably tell, there are some considerations to work through, especially with the watershed in this area. So it's sort of a moving conversation and at this point in terms of what the requirements will be for the applicant, because the city code actually does require curbs for this particular use, and curbs were not provided on the driveway. So the watershed and city staff have been kind of going back and forth about essentially how to work with the applicant to get this site into conformance.
Back to the other picture for a second.
Yeah. Let me know when you want to flip back.
I'm good.
Okay. You can see there's a large amount of asphalt on the property. So the requirements of the watershed are somewhat contingent upon the curb and the location of the curb. So that is one of the things that staff are currently working with the applicant on. I talked to the applicant today, actually, and he stated that he was looking to remove the asphalt now to get to the previous condition. And I had to tell him, I have to review this and get back to you in writing, because I think there are some considerations in the code as to how to proceed from here. So that's kind of the update that I have for you right now. I'm happy to take any other questions that you have. Yeah.
There were extensive renovations done to those two buildings. Is that the deal?
Yes, there were a number of improvements made to the inside or the interior of the buildings as well. I believe the applicant, without a permit. At last I heard it sounded like they had building permits for all of the improvements that required them.
And I'm flashing back to some other properties that did extensive renovations without proper permits and challenges with providing fire protection and exits and oh my God. I guess I'm very surprised that a purchaser of this property would not understand a property of this significance would not understand that there are things like permits and inspections and requirements.
You're preaching to the choir.
The reason I asked about that smaller existing building is I have a relative who worked in this complex and he thought that was a new building. So I'm not sure how much remained or if it was just 99% extensively renovated. But
There was a list of building permits, as I recall. If that gives you an idea of the amount of improvements.
welcome to Forest Lake.
Welcome to anywhere.
So what is our discussion supposed to be regarding this?
So yeah, the intent of this particular discussion item was as a way to kind of provide the planning commission with an ability to separate the conditional use permit for the fence from the parking lot considerations. Because the parking lot we haven't fully worked through that issue yet. So we're still kind of working through how to get compliant on that part of it.
The building
Well, I
stuff.
think
The
it's
building stuff's
absolutely
another-
essential that they be separated. We took the right direction there on that. You know, what can you say? You know, I mean, I just can't say
Building
what I
stuff
want to
is a
say.
separation.
And so my mom used to say, when you don't have anything good to say, don't say anything at all. You know, it's kind of one of those situations, you know, I don't have any sympathy at all for these people. I don't.
Forest Lake doesn't have a driveway permit application process, do we? Oh, we do.
Yes, we do.
So
I
in
just-
order for
I'm
someone to
just-
put a driveway in, they're supposed to pull a permit.
Well, not only a driveway, but a huge pad of asphalt.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's right.
Hey, I mean, it just,
Grading
this is
plan
not the kind.
for drainage.
For drainage, I mean, it's draining, some of this is draining onto the 35 right away as well.
Ryan has commented on it too, and he said MinDOT will be involved on drainage review as well, because anything draining to the west goes onto I-35 roadway, right of way. And the site also had wetland impacts. Those issues have been resolved and the restoration work was approved by Washington Conservation District. Washington County Conservation
There's
District.
a lot of moving parts to this.
But you don't need a residential driveway permit to replace your driveway.
Depends on whether you need one of the tin horns underneath it. Then
What?
The round tin horns,
Culverts, yeah.
culverts, thank you. Down south, we call it tin horns.
I'm a city boy.
Yeah, well,
Come on, y'all. You should know better.
You know, the disturbing thing that I've heard tonight several times is the contractor this and the contractor that, and the contractor didn't do this and the contract. By God, we've got to figure out a way to hold these contractors responsible. We do. We got to figure out something on this. I'm sick and tired of hearing that. I've been an architect all my adult life here, and I've had my fingers held to the fire over and over and over again, and I come here and I hear this garbage. You know, well, we're doing better, you know?
I hear you.
When did that kind of logic, you know, come into being? I don't know, I'm just amazed. And then I have a commercial entity like this, pull a trick like this and come with their hat in their hand. Just amazes me.
All right, we're at 10:15. I want to keep moving this along. Is there any additional enlightenment you'd like to give us on this?
No, we will have more information for you when we discuss this next.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to item 13, MXR1 standards discussion.
Is there any chance of taking 3 minutes here? I
Well,
need to go get a haircut.
well, Mr. Chair, this is an important discussion.
Yes, ma'am.
And I apologize to the rest of the commission. But I'm not going to be able to give it what it takes at 10:30 at night. I'm sorry, sir. Is
Can
there a
you give me
reason
5
either-
minutes?
Either Nathan or Patrick?
All right.
Okay,
All right,
yes, sir, I'm sorry.
Let me, short circuit Nathan
Sorry.
here.
I'm chomping at the bit. I'm sorry. The intent of this discussion item was just to have a really preliminary discussion. Obviously, there hasn't been a lot of time to prepare for this discussion. It's just a really wide ranging and there should be there's a lot of variables and considerations for this really big discussion. So the idea was, if I understand it correctly, Chair, to provide an opportunity to just talk about the process.
So I met with Mayor, and then I met with Patrick and Nathan regarding the MXR1 standard. We had the EDA City Council meeting. And so I presented to them that I think that one of our main things we always complain about is that we are always executing and never doing planning. So I encouraged the mayor and administration to allow the planning commission to take the driver's seat on this and decide what we want to do. And that's really was the point of Nathan putting the presentation back on there today. And my question I want to ask is this something that the commissioners are willing to work on? Or do we want to turf it back and wait and see what Nathan gives us? That's really the entire discussion for tonight.
Mr. Chair, when you say turn it back and wait until what Nathan gives us, Nathan, does that mean that you are going to do research and give us a recommendation? And quite frankly, I'm not looking to do a lot of huge density increases to our existing MXR, because I think our existing MXR provides a significant amount of density. But I'm willing to listen and see what things come with that density, whether there are, things, whether there are things like, what else you're looking at.
So we have 7 commissioners who have heard from countless people, countless developers, applicants. I think we have a good understanding of where we think a better understanding of where we think the community should go as far as development.
The communities or the developers' desires? Because I don't hear that Forest Lake residents are looking to be at what you're seeing in the new developments in Hugo right now, the cheek by jowl, the small stuff, the really compact stuff. I think that what I'm hearing about what folks feel the character of Forest Lake is that's not that small.
So the question, this is the discussion we need to have. So the question I'm asking for the commission is this something we want to take on? And do a fair amount of the legwork. I'm sure Nathan will get some. I'm fortunate I'm now retired, so I can do some. And I think, Patrick, you had your hand up.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to get back to what the concept is, and I think you're correct. I think the committee or the plan commission should begin to look at this and discuss it, and then when there are questions, technical questions, or if you can't find the research or you can't find the answers, that's when Nathan, and especially in this transition period, you work through because the discussion is this right for Forest Lake? If a change is necessary, what's that change look like? How much is it? And so I think you just need the broad, high level discussion. And then as you get into it more and you want specific facts or what other communities may be doing, then you and if you can't find it or don't want the committee to do that, or where you get stuck, we bring it back to Nathan and whoever else is doing the planning at that point. I mean, it's going to be a fairly longer process anyway.
And Mr. Chair, part of the basis of my concern is right now we have a really significant amount of Forest Lake that is zoned for MXR.
That's correct.
And so whatever we decide is going to, and it is the Forest Lake that is to be developed. And so whatever we decide is one, going to really decide what our community looks like. And it takes in a really large amount of the community.
16%.
That's a chunk of change, because realizing what is not developable in Forest Lake, and the fact that we've said in our comp plan that keeping some ag land is important, and dealing with MUSA and water issues is also a consideration.
So the question is, I take a straw poll, are we willing to discuss this issue at length?
Yes.
Absolutely, sir.
That's what I signed on for 10 years ago. I don't mean to sound like, holier than thou, but if I had known, I'll tell you, I'll tell the public, if I had known what being on the planning commission was gonna be like.
You're going to
and what it
burst my
included,
bubble.
I wouldn't have signed on initially. I wouldn't. Because I didn't sign on just to look at 6-foot variances of boathouses and garages and stuff like that. The way we spend the majority of our time, we've spent almost no time at all planning. I got on because I was interested in the fabric of the community and planning. I thought the planning commission was gonna, and I realized I probably should have been the one who knows, because I've been to more planning commission meetings than all the rest of you put together, and from the other side of the table. But, and I'm neither bragging nor complaining, but I just, I have, I'm coming close to the end here. I'm not gonna be on this thing forever. But I thought there was gonna be an opportunity to plan. I thought that the comp plan thing was gonna be more of a chance for us to be involved in the planning. And we had some chances, but it was mostly done by outside consult, the documents that were put together and stuff like that, and the way this thing looked and stuff like that. Not saying we didn't have any input at all, but it was mostly done by consultants, And I'm not saying that, we should have done it all, but it just seemed to me that it was really difficult. It still seems like it's difficult for us to do any kind of serious planning, And I suppose that sounds terribly negative, and I feel bad that I've sounded as negative as I have tonight, but and I don't know exactly how we solve the problem, but I think that of all of the topics that we could pick, that I believe would have some significant positive and knowledgeable input on, it would be lot size, because that's the most controversial thing. The controversial thing isn't these penny ante 2-foot, 3-foot, 6-foot, 10-foot variances, but it is the future of our community. And Susan, I appreciate where you're coming from, but, and I appreciate, I don't want to sound like I'm just some island of thought out there that I don't care about the community, because I do care about the community. But the caring about the community also has to include the future, and how the future is going to be financed, and taking, not just building new infrastructure, but figuring out a way to take care of what we've got. And we're falling behind. I mean, that's neither Democratic, nor Republican, nor centrist, or extreme, or anything. It's just a fact. And one of the things that I think we have to do is figure out a way to be attractive to developers who want to come in and help us build the community. I think that's, and I'm not saying that it's 65-foot lots, or I'm not trying to, I'm willing to navigate and discuss, what those parameters and things are. But, and the other side of it is, I want to know if I'm going to commit time to do that it's gonna count for something. It's not gonna just be automatically overturned by some, and I have high respect for the city council, and I have personal friends on the city council, and so I say what I say very carefully, but I don't want to spend, I don't want to spend a lot of time doing, putting work and effort and research into this and then just have somebody, somebody dab out, it's.
I don't think we'll see that problem because I think the council has a lot of respect for the planning commission.
I'd like
And
to
if-
think they
And
do.
if we put forth a solid plan with the thought behind it, I'm not saying we're gonna get 100%, but I think we would get a fair amount.
But the other thing that I think needs to be said is that, we have and have had over the last, or since I've been on what I would consider a very high level planning commission. I'm not looking for kudos. I'm not trying to just pat people on the back or that sort of thing, but I've stood in front of a lot of planning commissions. And we've had a quality group of people who think things through carefully. And the city of Forest Lake has been privileged, I believe, to have the people. And I'm not just toot my own horn here. I think you know me well enough to know I don't need to do that. But I'm not sure that the city of Forest Lake, and you can that's blame for whoever you want to that, has taken advantage of the think tank and the expertise and stuff that they've had on the planning commission. It's just too easy sometimes, I think, to just go ahead and hire a consultant to do something because kind of that's the way it's done.
Dennis, that's why it angered me so much that we worked hard on the 2040 comp plan. At the end, just before it was submitted and when a previous council voted on it, there was a huge change made in the southern part of the city. That was not anything that we had.
Want to keep this,
We'll go there.
keep moving this along.
Yeah.
So we'll put it on the agenda to have the discussion at the end of the next planning commission meeting. It doesn't sound like it's going to be a real crowded one, not like tonight. The presentation was attached here once again. I asked you to review that. I also asked if you would review the current MXR1 zoning. And if you need information on how to find that, it's all online if you don't have a hard copy of it. And then we can have a nice discussion on it. Nathan?
Just in terms of if you're looking for any research to be done to help you through this process, I'm obviously here as your staff to help get that done. So if there's anything that you're looking for in terms of reports, I'm happy to help provide that.
Can we just take 2 minutes here and just talk some real general things? I've been operating under the kind of the understanding that it's, we got 36 square miles here, and it's basically a third, and a third. Third of the city is developed, third of the city is wetlands and lakes and stuff, and a third of the city is undeveloped, developable property. Is that just ballpark? Is that about right?
Probably pretty close, actually.
Well, yes and no. I
So if it varies, where would it, what, do we not have that much developable land?
We should have a chart in the comp plan that explains all
Yes,
that.
we do. And
We'll bring that for the meeting.
Yeah.
we've said in the past that if we're going to have significant development, we want most of it to occur between 61 and going west and 61 and about a mile, maybe a mile and a half east,
Right.
but not all the way to the
Right,
Scandia
that
line.
we're not looking to, yeah, and when I talk, holistically, like the 36 square, I'm not looking to develop all 36 square miles. I'm not even, so,
Let's start with this MXR1 and see how it goes. And then I bet you if we do a good job, they'd be more than happy to let us work on it. That's my 2 cents. Any other comments?
I'll make a comment. I want to say that it's an honor and a privilege to be here, and I hope to be a part of not only what's going on now, but the future and planning, because I want to be a part of this community and I want to, not only get what I think a community needs, but more importantly, what the residents think that they need, and if it's a good, something that they think they need, help it happen. If it's not a good something, explain why it's not a good idea with facts and figures and a discussion about why, and maybe be swayed by some counter, but I would like back and forth a little bit. That's what I'm hoping to get out of this, and back and forth with the community. So they understand where the planning commission is coming from, and that the planning commission understands where the residents are coming from, and that hopefully we can build a consensus so there is less animosity between when you build something and they complain after the fact. That just is, it's, you know.
Question, and I don't know your background. Do you have some planning background?
Well, not planning for cities, but planning and overseeing and following through on a lot of different things, yes. But as far as cities, no, I used to be on a homeowners association.
Karen, can you get her hooked up with the League of Cities?
Already done.
Oh, you rule. There's some really good class.
Way to go,
size
Karen.
information. And that League of Cities stuff, and quite frankly, I try and go back on it a lot. If I sleep on my side, memories fall out.
All right, moving on. Do we have Councilperson Monson online tonight?
We do. My concern is that if she takes herself off of mute, we're all gonna get a shock. And
so- Well, thank you
Give it
for
a whirl.
participating. We'll catch up with her the next time.
Kelly, if you're there and you want to make a comment, if you could send it through the chat, that would be great. But I do have a comment from Ryan. He said he doesn't have any updates, but he wanted to say congratulations to the newest commissioner and welcome.
So, Councilperson Munson is our liaison to the city council. We've on our other, and we'll
Oh,
wrap.
excuse me. I'm sorry. That was Kelly that said that. Not Ryan.
We'll do our, I kind of thought that was a
Sorry.
little odd, but I thought we'd just go over the typo here. We'll do the other real quick. Anything, Nathan?
No, I can just really quickly say, you know, just as in terms of a status update for you, obviously, we're filling in for the city as Donovan's role is, it's contemplated how to fill that role. So if there are zoning interpretation questions and any kind of zoning related thing, I would be the point of contact. So very happy to be here. I'm actually from Forest Lake. I graduated from Forest Lake High School, so I'm Ranger. It's kind of a happy coincidence that I ended up here. So I wanted to share that with everyone. It's professionally very exciting for me to work for this community, but very excited to be here. Happy to be a point of contact for the community.
Patrick, do you have anything?
No, not really. Just you will need to expect more plan reviews. And we're having all of a sudden a lot of interest in new subdivisions and new developments. We have 5 in the pipeline. You saw one of those tonight. All of a sudden things are starting to take off, and I think we should be ready for next year as well. So.
And then perhaps the city council should talk to our consulting engineering firm about how we're going to supply them with water.
I can't disagree with you there. So, and the other thing is that when you do consider the MXR1 is that I ask you to also consider if you go more dense, if that's the outcome, you also consider more open space to compensate for some of that, because neighborhoods are important. And one of the things we did find out in our strategic planning that parks and trails are very important to the community and to those who want to live here. And looking at the development of parkland in the last 10 years, there hasn't been any new parkland. So I think we have to look at that, only because once the land is gone, it's gone. And we should be looking closer at obtaining parkland and not so much the money we can develop later, but you can't get the land back once it's gone. So if you do go more dense, I would recommend you looking at some of that as well.
Karen, do you have anything?
I do not.
Dennis?
Said more than enough tonight.
Susan?
For those of you that know Karen and Bob Moorhead passed away yesterday. Forehead, Sam. Bob was was an absolute pillar of this community. Want to talk Ranger pride, the man lived it, and it's a loss to our community. But please keep Karen in your thoughts and the rest of the family.
Kevin? Just one question, I guess, that came up. Someone started talking about, I think it was about water. Do we have enough capacity with our water treatment facilities for all these new projects? Or is that something as a city we have to look towards in terms of expanding or adding water treatment facilities?
I think that for what we have now, we've expanded our water capacity in the last few years, last 2, 3, 4 years. There's plans for additional capacity and additional water structures. We would have to do some more looking into projections on what the growth is and where the water is and how far it would, part of the challenge is getting water to some of these new subdivisions. If they're too far out, we probably won't. So we just have to look at that and do some projections. But right now we're in good shape. We're getting better. We're putting new wells in and we're putting new storage in. So that's been a long-term struggle for this community. But I think we're finally starting to overcome that struggle. So I think we're in good shape. And I think we have the internal staff now that understands all that and plans for the future pretty well. So I'm not too concerned about that.
Ryan has made a comment about that. He said that Water Treatment Plant 1, Water Treatment Plant 3 have expanded capacity after recent projects. Water Treatment Plant number 2 is under construction right now, and a new Water Treatment Plant number 4 to go out to bid in January and start construction in 2022.
I just remember it having been a real concern for us 2 years ago.
Absolutely.
Geneva?
I just had one. It's kind of back to that, the guy who was kind of told by somebody in the city that things would be fine and blah, blah, blah. And it looked like it was like 47% impervious stuff, and then it went down to 37% or whatever the numbers were. How did it get that high in the first place? Did somebody just do whatever they wanted and permits weren't applied for? And this guy just kind of got stuck with, oh, I think I'm okay. And then
Yeah, how the impervious rule came in the 90s. Mid-90s is about the time I built my house, because it wasn't quite there yet in 95. So it must have been 96 maybe that it was adopted, 97. So what happened before then is all over the map.
Okay. So then that brings me to this question of realtors are telling me this and a city planner told me this and blah, blah, blah. You have to feel somewhat sad for the homeowner who buys a house, takes it down on the suggestion, and I don't know how much, some of it could be BS, I get that, but how are we trying to get the message out in a more open manner so people, like new people coming into our neighborhoods, can maybe have easier access to this information? Maybe it become part of it at the time of sale of a house or something like that. Like things you need to know about Forest Lake, that a realtor is required to give somebody so that they do know that there's going to be certain restrictions in advance of a problem instead of after the fact, especially on the lake, because the rules have been changing. And it seems like everybody says, well, it's like this, or it's like this, or don't ask this, or don't do that. But let's try to be proactive maybe and require realtors to put it out there, where building requirements are required for these types of things. No guesswork. Almost like a homeowners association thing, except this is what the city requires. And they have to sign off that they got it. Then there's, and you can make them searchable by PDF, so people could say permits are required for, something like that.
Some cities have the signs
Yeah.
at all the way around the community. Building permits required for almost everything in this town, that's a paraphrase, but
Those,
it's,
like
it's,
flashing lights that you guys, when the watering ban came, maybe weekly, that could be like a new, did you get your, something like that. Service announcements that come out like on ongoing basis. Just so people know.
Patrick?
What I will agree is I'm not sure we can ever mandate realtors to do anything or to provide information, but what we can do is do a better job internally to have the information available, have it on our website. One of the things I believe with the vacancy we have now is an opportunity for us to do a better job at what we do and to inform the public better and to have materials available so that there isn't any confusion on what you can or can't do. I think we've struggled a little bit with that in the past, and we're going to try to overcome that. So we also have to, do that internally first to make sure we understand it. And when the new planner comes in, whoever that may be, they understand it and we can, and I think Nathan's a perfect example of clarity and, knowing exactly what's going on. And I think we need to strive for that. So that's something internally we're going to try to do as well.
Not always take the recommendations of the group.
Oh, I don't think you guys did. You seem to be pretty independent thinkers.
Some days.
hey, for the record, Nathan and Geneva, all of the planning commission meetings aren't like this one. So I mean, don't go away discouraged tonight.
Do I look discouraged?
No, you don't.
So-
You've been a great sport for your first time. What a baptism.
Moving along here, the chair is looking for a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion that we adjourn.
Have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. It's a non-debatable motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Hey.
Opposed? Abstentions?